All right, welcome back. We are COMP229. That's Web Application Development in the summer 2022 semester at Centennial. And it's week 12 of our broadcast and recording this live session that we have together. We have a couple of things to discuss today. And I know this weekend was a long weekend. And I said we're going to get together on Monday. For some people who are watching this video, there was a long weekend on Monday, so I didn't join the Zoom call. And I gave you guys time off for those people who are on the Monday session. But on the Wednesday session, I'm going to record everything that we have, so that way you can always look back if you're interested in these videos later on. So this week, again, things that we're concerned about are now the final release. So the final release is the authentication release is come and gone. At this point, it was due this past weekend, right? If I'm not wrong, and that's week 12. And coming up is the final release that's due week 14. So week 14 is, when the final release is due, even though it's the last week of class here, there's some notes for you guys. And one of them is that the final release, which has been released, is due Monday, August 15th at midnight. So that's when your actual, the actual components are due, right? And the reason why I'm making it on the Monday as an example instead of the Sunday is to give you that extra day, but also because I want to give you as much time as possible to get it done between now and then. The same thing goes with the final presentation. So the final presentation, which is based on your final release, there's a couple of options. One, it's really due during class. So I've made it due at the end of the week. So that's like, I don't know, week 14, August 19th or whatever the last day of class is. And the presentation video and live presentations are going to be optional this semester. So if you want to do a live presentation for me on during the last week of class, that's 2 short weeks from now, then we can certainly do that. And then I'll mark you on the spot. I'll give you your marks and all that kind of stuff for your live presentation. If you don't, and if you're not ready, and if you need more time, then I will accept the presentation video for you guys on the final day of semester, which is going to be on August 19th. There's no extensions. So if you don't get it in by August 19th, your entire team loses that mark, 15%, I think, which is pretty hefty. So please make sure you have it done, by the end of the semester. Weekly reports upcoming, 4 and 5. 4 is due this Sunday. 5 is due next Sunday. These are the last 2 reports of the semester. They're individual. And I just want to talk about, before I talk about what we're doing today in terms of the tech stuff, I want to talk about the stuff that I'm expecting for your final release. And I want to mention this because people get confused about what I'm asking for, and they don't understand what I want. And I'm going to tell you. Number one, it should be pretty at this point. Okay, so from now until the end of semester, until the time that everything is due, my expectation is that your images, layout, web fonts, maybe even a short video background that you might have, on your site, all that kind of stuff is something that you want to add. When I say a short video background, you can look up short, like video background, web, web page, web page example, right? So if you look at, sometimes what you'll have is you'll have a video background in the back, right? And so I'm just choosing one here, where you're going to have, kind of video kind of happening here where you can actually see whatever. Now you don't have to play it like this because that's a video, an actual video, but there's other ones where you don't have to play. They just kind of play video as you go. This is actually down. Let's see if there's another one here. That's actually down. I'm just trying to find some examples here so that you can see some of these ones, right, as an example. So this kind of stuff here where you can see that there's video playing in the background. It gives more interaction as an example, within the page itself. It makes it more interesting. So that is just some examples. It doesn't have to be for you, but things that I recommend is stuff like this, okay? Responsive design. So responsive design means, say responsive, it should work on multiple screen sizes. So please test your app on multiple screen sizes, your phone, your iPad, Large screens, smaller screens, it should work on all those things. That's the second thing. Okay, so point number two. So pretty site, it's got to be pretty, it's got to be responsive, right? Fully functional. So again, at least two question types, as an example, should be there. And when I say automatic owner, that means when you make a question, then the owner is automatic when you make that thing. It shouldn't be something you assign the owner. It just happens when you're creating it, when you're logging in. Some people have done sites before where you have to assign the owner or something weird. That doesn't happen. And I'm mentioning this because there's some people that I've seen that you have to kind of say, I'm the owner, like click onto it and put in your username. No. Okay. So full functionality is what I'm expecting. So anything that's missing from the site, now is your time to put it in. Report display. Okay. So again, it could have a bar graph, a pie graph, or whatever. There must be a display. Export of reporting data functionality. That is something that you need to do. So example, export to PDF, export to CSV, export to Word, whatever. It has to be something that you can export. All pages should work. All right. So example, the contact page. If you have a contact page that you've included, it should be fully functional. Fully functional. That means that you have to make it so that there is a, something that I can send kind of a message to you guys or whatever. That should completely work. And there's some ways of doing that. Um, there's some ways of doing that. As an example, in your, when you're putting together your contact page, no placeholder text. Okay, this is important. So no lorem ipsum or placeholder text. As an example, if you're going to have placeholder text at all, that is going to count against you. So don't think about this as a prototype. You're making an actual site that's functional, right? So I want you to use actual data. And when you do your testing, when you're doing your demos, so when you're demoing, I want an actual survey that you want to create. So please don't put in like A, A, B, B, C, C and say, look, it works. No, I want you to show me an example of if someone was to actually create a survey, how it would function. Go through the demo as if you're using it as a user, almost like a little tutorial on how it would work, okay? So that's important to note. These are basic things that you guys should have. And the reason why I'm mentioning this because some people have finished off their site and they're like, well, but it's functional. But no, it's not. It's not pretty. Well, I couldn't make it pretty. I'm too busy. It doesn't, the display does, the reporting doesn't work. Well, we couldn't get that done. Well, if you don't get these things done, I'm going to take marks off. Oh, well, it's not responsive. We didn't think about the table working as a responsive table or this image working in a responsive way. Test your site thoroughly, guys, right? Try and break it. And this is why over the next 2 weeks, so this week, I'm going to ask for anyone who's ready to show me their stuff. And next week, I'm going to give you feedback to help you to say, no, this is no good, or you're missing this now. I'm going to be more nitpicky because, now it's time to make it pretty at this point, okay? Before, it was just about functionality and security. Now it's prettiness and reporting, okay? So that is the, kind of the final release summary of requirements. The other thing I want to talk about is when it comes to your presentation. Okay, let's mention this. So for presentation, for the presentation itself, I only need one presenter, is required. Okay, and it's even suggested. Okay, max two. All right, so and instead of required, let's say recommended. Okay, because some people, what they have this idea in mind that they're going to present as a team, but again, handoff between one person and the other is not that great. I recommend picking your best presenter, right? So, and I'll put that in here too. Pick your best presenter. Okay, so whoever that likes to do it, who likes to do this kind of stuff. Sometimes what people also like to do is they have a person to talk about, to demo the site, and the other person to do the PowerPoint presentation. That's okay too. If you have one person that's more technical that you want to use, and the other person that is more, someone who wants to, kind of describe and introduce the team and all that kind of stuff and talk about challenges and everything else, that's fine. But that's what I recommend. I'm telling you to plan this from the very beginning. You can start putting together your slide deck now. Don't wait until the last minute to put your slide deck together. And a slide deck, which means PowerPoint or Google Slides, is required, right? So slide deck is required. Slide deck so PowerPoint or Google Slides, right, is required, right, for your presentation. Okay, so that's important, an important note. It's required. There is no way out of this thing. You can't just talk to it. Some people have said, well, I just want to talk to it. I don't have a PowerPoint. Well, okay, well, then you're losing half the marks or a third of the marks right there if you don't have a PowerPoint presentation. So make sure you do that. You organize yourself in a presentation. Remember that this is a visual medium, right? And so when it comes to your slide deck and your presentation, try and limit each slide. You don't have a slide limit, okay? So limit each slide to max 3 bullet points, right? And let's say, just to give you some leeway, 3 to 4, all right? 3 to 4 bullet points max. I don't want walls of text. So in other words, no walls of text. Okay, we don't want to see that. I don't want to see a wall of text. It's terrible. No one's going to read that stuff anyway, guys. I'm definitely not going to, and you're not going to do it. Don't write stuff. If you're going to do any of that stuff, then write your notes. I also recommend, we'll put this in the presenter part. It's also recommended that you have, kind of notes. So, prepare slide notes. All right. So what this means is, if you're going to write walls of text and you expect someone to, to do that, this is the kind of stuff that you want to kind of put in your notes, because reading notes or having cue cards or reading from preparing what you're going to say is often quite better than reading, kind of ad hoc or trying to just, making it up as you go along kind of thing. We don't want you to make it up. It's better than ad hoc. So no ad hoc or presentations, right? So we don't want that. We want you to prepare, okay, for what you're going to say. Think about this as you're preparing to meet a client. Would you randomly talk to your stuff? Maybe, if you're really polished, right? But most of the times it's not going to work great. So read your slide, read the notes, but don't read the slides. Slides, you should be something that is something that you understand what you're talking about. So again, limit each one. Use images, all right, as well as text. So don't just have just text and that's it. Use images, icons, color, for your slides. Make it interesting, all right? So, you may need to customize. Okay, so because you're getting points for this, you're getting points for your actual material that you're using, right? So this is important as well. And make sure you cover things in your slide deck that's in your design document, your external design document that I asked you to put in. And I will go in more detail about the presentation as we get closer. So next week I'll hit this again. I'll remind you about this again, because this is an important piece. Okay, so start thinking about it now. Don't wait, like I said, until the last minute, because it's just going to be more load. And I know that everything is happening at the last time. Now you're going into exams, final tests. Let's call them final tests in a couple weeks. You've got final assignments that are winding up, and that you're going to have to submit soon. You've got other teamwork that you're doing. So it's not going to get any easier. So again, going back to this, project managers, right? And your groups that I'm talking about here, please get together. And what I recommend is start talking about all of your courses during your meeting and say, okay, this is what we got going on. Here's my schedule. Let's plan. Let's schedule this stuff in so we can get this done. If you don't plan and you don't schedule it, it won't get done, guys. There's a lot happening at the end of semester. So that's my recommendation to you. Okay, any questions around the final release and the presentation? Again, I'll go over more about presentation requirements next week. Okay. Okay, so next part is what we're covering today technically. So technically what I want to go over is more React. That's our live session, accessing the movie list data. Last time we just secured our site. And online on the course shell, we have deploying your application to Heroku and MongoDB Atlas, right? And Microsoft Azure or some other cloud provider for the Angular front end. And notice that I said that there's two separate providers for for your online stuff, if you're using, let's say, a front end like Angular and a back end like Express, right? And the reason for this is because sometimes there's crosstalk, and if you don't set things up properly with Express, if put Express and Angular on the same kind of server, it can be weird. So just be on it, just be aware of this, and sometimes keeping it separate is recommended. So what do you do for React? How do we put things live on React? Well, again, you have your MongoDB Atlas separate. That's the first thing that's going to happen with React for this one. That's not going to change. The server should be on its own. You should make it, its own site that has nothing to do with the front end. You can serve both of them on Heroku as an example. That might work just fine. Okay, but again, separate servers is what you want to do. One server that's just for React, and the other server that's just for Express. Now, React does not need Heroku, because Heroku is for Node.js type of applications and those kind of stuff. React can simply be served up on any regular website, even GitHub Desktop, GitHub Pages as an example, or something like that. And I will show you how to do that. If not this week, next week, I'll talk about how to do that. But even for your application, if you're someone, and most of you are just running an Express application, there's nothing for you to do. It's just you put your Express on Heroku, and MongoDB Atlas is your database, and that's it really at the end of the day. Okay, so that is what we're doing. Let's get moving on this one. And as always, what I'd like to do is I want to hit that stuff that we did last day. So let's go back to our desktop, and here's Centennial, and I believe you guys are section 1. Because we were together. Our front end, the last time we were together was the 21st, right? Which was, was it the 21st? 27th. So the 27th being, what? No, July, Tom, July 27th, which is last week. Yeah, so this is it. All right, so you guys are section 1. So we're going to just do our front end from section 1, continue with our front end from section 1, but we also have to run our back end, because we can't run our back end and our front end separately. That won't work out too easily. Okay. So let's get this done. So I'm just going to run Visual Studio Code, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to run our backend API there. So again, like we did before, because we're running it locally. Here it is. Then what we want to do for our backend API is do a couple things. One, let's run mongod locally. Okay, so mongod, we need to run that, because without that, we don't have a database connection. Okay, so that's the first thing. And you can see it's running on 27017. Then what we want to do is we want to run nodemon and make sure that it connects to mongod, right? So that's the next thing, the next part. So part 2. And there it is. It's connected to mongod. So now that we have our backend running, this is our backend. We haven't made many changes yet to the backend. We may clean up this week and next week. We'll do some cleanup. And then we'll kind of shut that down. And then what I want to do is run another instance of Visual Studio Code. There we go. And we want to run our front end on there. So that's our front end piece there. So this is what we did last day. And remember, whenever we run our front end, what we want to do is, run yarn start. Excuse me, run start. Yeah. And let me just yarn start, which will run the little server that is going to connect to the backend, right? The yarn start is what also is going to happen with yarn when we start our server is it's going to launch the browser that's related to it as soon as it starts. So our default browser is going to pop up. There it is. You can see that this is running on port 3000, and on our backend, let's just go to the backend. You can see that when we connect to the backend, so if I go and surf to About Us, or whatever, what we're hoping is that as soon as I have anything to do with the back end, it's going to react. Now notice that home, about, and projects, all this stuff here is content on the front end, right? We're not hosting this content on the back end. Our services, contact us page, and then if I log in though, if I go and log in, now we've done something. Okay, we've actually accessed the back end. And if we go back to our back end, you can clearly see that we've logged in, through the back end. There it is. Okay, so now you can see the back end responding. And this is kind of what we want to see because we want to be able to connect our front end to our back end. Okay, there's our front end. So now we're ready to go. And so we have that capability of logging in and everything else. And last day, what we did was we created our login, logout, and register components. And it also, remember, whenever we create a component in the authentication part, we also create the related page information. And this is the page information itself. Notice here, we also have this message area. And I talked about how we need to fix this maybe today if we have time. And one way we can talk about fixing the message area is this idea of this deconstructed array. This deconstructed array, and that's what it's called, or a tuple. Sometimes it's called a tuple or a set in other languages as well. There's two parameters, two elements of the array. There's the first element and the second element. And the first element of this deconstructed array is the getter, and the second element is the setter. Okay, and you can see that that's what they are. Actually, we can think about the first element as the field and the second element as the setter. That's how it works, okay? And how do we know what this deconstructed array is? You can see that, when you hover over, it says that use state, right? Use state is part of React, and use state, what it does is it creates a state variable or a state value that we can keep track of it. So if we want to be able to keep track of any errors that come onto the page, we can do that. And we can have an error message. If an error message pops up, then error message would be the first part of the deconstructed array, and the second part would be set error message or set message. Maybe we'll, instead of message, sometimes we want positive messages to come out too for our login page. Let's start with this first, and let's create a deconstructed array and a new use state variable. Let's see if we can make this work. So copy that one, put it in here, and we'll just make this new variable called message. All right, so that's the message. And instead of set password, we'll call it set message. Okay, there we go. So message and set message. And the message will start off as nothing, so there won't be anything in the message at all. It'll be an empty message, right? And what we want to do, right, is we want to do something like this. So we want to be able to say something like, or what we did with the login header component. Remember the header component? The header component had this is logged in, set is logged in, false, true or false kind of thing, right? And basically we're checking to see if is logged in, right? If is logged in, then we can kind of return a element. And notice what it does. Toggle login returns a JSX element. So that's kind of what I want to do here with this as well. So it kind of harkens back to this. We can definitely have the message that's going to be written out here. True, we could do that. We can store it in the message, right, as an example. And if we have an error, we can have another state. So one thing is storing the message, okay, storing the message. It could be positive or negative. And the other one is if we have an error or we have a message that we're going to send. All right, so that's how it can work. So, so we can say something like toggle message. Let's do that. Notice that it says that we need a message. We'll kind of build it in before the handle login. So let's make a function called handle message. Okay, we'll take, for this one, we don't really need an event, right? We don't really need an event, but we're going to return kind of JSX if we have a message. So if the message, there's our getter, if my message exists, right, if it's not equal to an empty string, right, if it contains more, like example, we can say message.length. If message.length is, greater than 0, right, because that would be kind of a way of checking how long the message is. If we have a message to kind of put out there, that's what we're saying, then we want to return some kind of data. So we want to return a message, right? That's what we want to do. And, otherwise we won't, right? So what does this return do? Well, we have some examples here. So if I go into our backend API, and if I look here in our server, and if I go to our views, and let's take a look at our um, login, the login component, here's the login message, then remember what we did, right? We have a message that goes like this, where we have a div tag and we have a message in here, right? Alert danger, whatever it's going to be, right? So we can kind of grab this message, this idea, right? And it's almost exactly the same. If message length is greater than 0, then hey, if otherwise, don't show it, kind of thing. So this is kind of a conditional component that we're going to make show, similar to this. Okay, so copy this one and go back in here and paste it in. So this idea. So there's our message area, right? And what we want to do is just style this a little bit. So first, the ID is okay. That's our message area. That's nice. But our class can't be class. It's got to be class name, because class name is, it's going to replace this. Clearly, this is no good, right? And what we want to say is we want to kind of inject the message that's here. Whatever the message is, we want to kind of put it in here if the message length is greater than 0. That's how it works. Okay? So that is how handle message will work. And now if I hover over that, you can see that it returns a JSX element, okay, or undefined, one of the two, right? And if that's true, if it handles a JSX element and either I can press something else or not, then in here in our code, we can actually put handle message. So we can say something like, I want to do the same exact thing that we did inside of our header, where we kind of did this thing here. We notice that handle toggle login was kind of like what we want to do with handle message. We kind of have a solution for this, right? So we already have curly braces. We might as well put the handle message in here. So we're going to say handle message, right? And that's how it's going to be, like so, right? And handle message will only pop up. The only time it will pop up is when there is a message here, okay? So that's when this happens, handle message, okay? All right, cool. Well, how do I get a message that's in there? How do I load a message up? Well, when I have an error, if, for example, there's a couple of if statements here. One is if I have an error, right? And the other one is if I get a message back from my data, right? So if data success, cool, that's good. But what if data is not success? So data, remember, has a success, true or false, as well as it has a message, data.message. So I can say then, well, this is true. If this is true, then we want to say our message, right? Message is equal to data.message. That's what I want it to do, right? Okay. So then remember, here's our message right here. This is our message, right? And I want to set this. So really what I want to say is set message, right? And I want to set the message to this. That's how we're going to do it. Set message to data.message. And that is what's going to go here. And I might as well do the same thing here. So if there's an error, another kind of error, I want it here. We don't have that kind of error yet, but I want to be able to get that data message in here. So we could do, because there is no data that comes into this part, because only errors come through here. There's no data, like we couldn't get anything. We can say something like our message is going to be something like, server error. Okay, something like that. And there will be a message in there if we have this. Otherwise, we're going to get a nice friendly message that we got in here. Okay, so let's save that. Save that. And that's going to be giving us our handle login, right? And when we have a message, because this is going to retain state, when we kind of come back in here, handle message is basically going to say, hey, I'm going to call handle message right here. When we reload the page, handle message will be called, which is going to go back up here and call the message itself. And after I call the message, it'll check if the message length is greater than 0. And the reason why we'll know this is because it's going to store the message in a stateful way right here. This is where it's going to go. So again, pretty good. in terms of how it can possibly work. Let's see if this is going to work, or if maybe we're wrong. The message doesn't work this way. Let's just see. Okay, so so let's go back online and try and log in. So let's log out first. There we go. And then we'll log in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there's no message, right? Because we're good to go, right? But one thing that's happening is, well, we don't have an error here. But what if we have an error? What if I try admin, but I put in a wrong password? We should get a message here now. Log in, right? And, well, it didn't work. So why didn't it? Why didn't it? Okay, so let's do a Control-Shift-J, and let's see what's going on here. So nothing in the console, right? But the page reloaded, right? It didn't go anywhere. It stayed in the login page, and the page reloaded, right? So that is an issue, right? Because nothing happened. So let's do a couple of tests, right? So what we want to do is I want here in the use effect. Use effect is a really smart little thing, okay? And what use effect does is it triggers, this thing triggers, as an example, every time you know, there's a change. Here it's saying it's only going to trigger once for document title, okay? So every time we're only going to change the document title one time, right? But what if I use effect again? So use effect is interesting in that I can make use of it twice, right? I can call use effect as many times as I want. It's just a function, right? But instead of it triggering whatever I want, what if I wanted to make it so that it keeps track of any message changes? So on message, that's what this does. When the message changes, use effect will trigger, okay? So what I can do is I can say something like, I want to do a console log, and I want to output the message to the console log, whatever that message happens to be. Okay, this is a way of testing our little example here. Let's try it again, all right? So again, I go admin, and I put it a wrong thing or incomplete, and then click login, and nothing. So that means that the reset of the page, when I reloaded the page, it actually cleared everything up. Right? So what about, but it did this, it actually, you know, went through and got to this point right here. Okay, so here's where we got to. This is if we're going to reload and we're going to go to home. But what about when we're going to an error? This is what we want. Do we really want to reload location? And the answer is maybe not. Let's just comment this out and see what happens. So save, going back here, and we'll refresh, right, to see what this is. And let's try it again. So admin, and then put a, you know, kind of a error thing there, and let's not reload and see what happens. Log in, and then we get this really funky thing that happens. Okay. So let's read it. It says cannot read properties of undefined reading length, right? So we don't know what length is, even though we think it's a thing. Handle message is trying to. That's good. That's a really good thing that it's trying to do this. And it says the above error occurred in login component. It says this is what's happening here, and it blocked our problem. So length is not possible. It's not a possible thing, right? Okay. So that's interesting. So data message, right? First of all, let's read the data message. Let's output the data message right away. So again, we're going to do a console log, and we're going to take that data message and output it and see if we're actually getting any data back when we are unsuccessful, right? That's what I want to see. Is there a data message, or maybe I'm wrong? I don't know. There is no data message, and that's where we're getting a length of 0. So save. We're doing troubleshooting here, and let's refresh. There we go. And we're just going to go here and put in some kind of error and log in again, and let's see what we get. Okay, so up here, I get undefined. So that's why we're getting it, because our message is undefined. So what's happening on the back end? Let's go to the back end itself and see what's happening here, because we're getting this post login problem. And remember, what's going to happen is we should get a message back, right? Remember? Well, let's see if that's true. So if I go to our back over here to our routes, and if I go to my controller, and if I go to auth.ts, then it says it's not message, it's MSG. That's what we used, right? It would be nice if we actually use message instead of MSG, but that's what we used here. So register, and when we log in, right, as an example. And let's make sure that they're all the same, all these little messages. So MSG, MSG, we're using message for all of these things. It'd be nice if it makes sense, right? MSG to me is an ugly way of doing things on the front end because we have lots of room. We can make it whatever we want. Find and replace, absolutely. And let's make sure there's no other place we have messages like that. So MSG, we have MSG everywhere. So MSG is no good. It's not monosodium glutamate. It's not, we're doing that, to do that. We want to have something else. So let's do it on the movie list first because we know we're going to get there. And we want to Control Shift B to transpile on the back end here. So Control Shift B, make sure you do that. It's going to ask you to transpile and do a watch task. So we're going to make changes to the back end now. We need to be able to do that. Give it a second. Awesome, no errors. And then what we want to do is we want to change everything that has MSG to message. So again, I'm here in the movie list backend, Control A, Control F, right? And we want to find MSG. So there's 6 iterations of MSG, and we want to replace it with message. Okay, replace all. You can see the message has now been replaced a bunch of times, right? Message, message, and so on. And let's just report these people that are doing this kind of stuff. Just a momento. Yeah. Just a moment. Getting a little spammed here. Report. Just a moment, guys. I'm getting spammed here. Funny how things go. One sec. So interesting. Yeah. One more second, guys. I do apologize. I'm just getting a little bit spammed on the on YouTube, which is bizarre. It happens though, so we just have to kind of do it per second myself because I'm noticing it, and I will just report everybody that does this stuff. So you're going to be, whoever you are, you're going to be reported. Maybe it's a bot that's doing it, and that way we can just remove all those crazy things. There we go. Okay, awesome. So that's done. Isn't that awesome? So we found it and replaced this stuff. There we go. And we want to do the same thing for our auth TS. So we're going to replace, again, I'm looking for messages. I'm replacing all of them. And you can see now that all of those have been replaced. Let's make sure we save all. So back up here, we're going to save all. So we have message. It's just a nice way of looking at things, right? Because then message now makes sense. Good. Awesome. Let's go back now. We don't need the front end anymore, or the back end. Let's go back to this, and we want to replace, refresh, and I want to do the same thing. So I'm going to admin, and I want to log in. There we go. So logging in, no message, that's fine. No errors. Let's log out. Again, just testing the functionality so it doesn't break. And admin, but we have an error. And what happens? Oh, this is good. Look at that. Authentication failed. And that's the message we're going to get. Wonderful. This is exactly what I expected here for it to happen, right? Notice that we're getting 2 messages, right? Why? Because I'm making it happen twice, right? So that's here. Making it happen, in our, sorry, wrong one. Let's go actually to the front end. There we go. I'm making it happen here, right, with this use effect. I'm doing a console log. And I'm also making it happen, down in here with this console log. So this is where it's actually happening, okay? So I don't need this. So we can set the message. We know that there is a message that we're going to send. And this is pretty good. So save. And let's refresh. Okay. But now that message has started to work, right? So admin, and if I type in the wrong message, then I can log in and it's going to give me this authentication failed stuff, right? Because, this is pretty good. Just going to keep reporting these guys because they keep on spamming me, which is pretty cool. I can do this on the fly. Okay, so there you go. So does that make sense? So this is the idea behind it here. And the more we do this kind of stuff where we have this error, the better it is. Now, what if we also want other things to happen, right? So I had this thing, but it didn't really refresh. And what about this part? This stuff we have to handle alone, right? We have to kind of like wipe out the form. So that's another thing we have to do, right? So how do I reset the form itself? I want to reset the form. So the form, remember, we have a username, right? And we have a password. Username and password, we need to reset those things. So again, it's almost like when I set message, I want to at the same time handle our reset. So if there's a message, if my message length is greater than 0, that means there's an error of some kind, right? And so, yeah, we want to return this, but we also want to do a couple of other things. We want to say something like, I want to reset the form data, and we have access to that by using our set username. So set username, all right, and I can set username to back to this, so I can set it back to nothing, and I can set my password also back to this because we have direct access to this stuff in real time. Set, save. Let's try this again. And if there's an error, if there's an error, and if I have a problem, and if I type admin and some value that's wrong, then I want to log in, and it should, well, replace those things. But there's an issue. So it says too many re-renders. React limits the number of renders to prevent an infinite loop. Okay, so that's something that's interesting, right? Because it's trying to do a re-render. Now it says, look, it says consider adding an error boundary to your tree to customize error handling behavior. It says that. It says React limits the number of renders in an infinite loop, and it says render with hooks. Okay, so why is this happening? Why is this happening? Well, it's happening because of our use state, our use effect that's happening right here. So let's just get rid of this. And let's see if I believe that's the reason why it's happening, because we're actually changing the message. We're setting our username and password, and we only want to do it once. And this is going to render it a bunch of times. So let's try this again. Let's handle the message and then set this up again. And let's see what happens. Let's try that. So back to this, refresh, and let's try making that message happen, right? And if I click login, well, we have that same problem, right? Because it says too many re-renders. Okay, all right. So what if I went to here, and what was the problem before? When we did this window location reload, right, stuff, when we thought about that, when we did that, then, sorry, just spamming. These bots aren't stopping, eh? So we're gonna just continue to report these bots until they're gone. Bizarre, really bizarre. Okay. All right. There we go. Okay, so what if we were to reset? What does this resetting thing do? So sorry, window reload. We need to window reload on home, but what about here? If we window reload on this one, so this one is a server error. We won't see the server error. Let's just take that out for now. But this one here is where the window reload thing happens. I thought this is what whatever that if we reload, then we maintain state, right? We kind of maintain state. What happens when I do this, right? So let's go back to here. And if I reload, and if I go admin, and I put an error, and if I do login, then we reloaded but we lost the message too, because that's something that is not a good thing to do. So yeah, certainly we can do a reload, but that is a problem. And the reason why the messaging is spamming us, and I want you to think about this as well, is remember what's happening here. Okay, we're basically what we're doing is we're saying every time the user changes the value on user change name, where I'm setting the password and and the username, I'm changing these values here. We have an on change event. This is what's triggering all those things. Okay, so every time I set username, I'm going to set the username. I'm going to do this twice. As soon as I do this, I change this, and when the value changes, I want that to change, right? And same thing goes with this one. This will actually trigger this on change password event. It'll trigger it, a bunch of times. It'll keep triggering it over and over again. Every time the password changes, I'm going to re-trigger this thing, right? So it's almost going to be, kind of create this infinite loop when I do this on change stuff. Why? Because I'm physically changing the form, right? So this is the form that's being changed, right? And I'm not resubmitting the form. The handle login trigger only triggers one time, but this on change, it triggers every single time, right? It triggers every single time. And what we want to do is, it's almost as if when we're handling our message, yes, I want this to clear. That's true. Is there another way of resetting our form, right? Because we want to be able to reset our form data in here as well. And remember that the form itself has an ID, right? And we could use some, JavaScript here to reset the form, because all we have to do is get access to this login form, and then we're good to go. We just call the reset function, because that's what this does. The cancel actually does type reset, right? So that's one thing that happens as well. So when the form resets, we want to, we want to call almost like a reset the form thing. We want to reset the form, right? So that's something that we want to do. Almost like I want to reset the form, but I don't want to reset the page, right? So how do I do that? So again, there's lots of ways to address this, but for now, let's just do it like this, where we don't reset anything. So we're not doing in the handle message, all it does is handle the message. And we have to think back later on if we have time today, because there's more involved in this. That's why I'm telling you about it, that this has to happen, right? We need to be able to reset the form, because the form data is there, admin, and it's the wrong password. There's other things we didn't do. We also didn't do some fancy effects, like for example, the ability for us to highlight the field and all those things. But there's other things out there that can help us. One of them for React is something called Formic. All right, so Formic is a way of building React forms nicely. And Formic has a lot of little functions here that can help us out, as an example. It can also do things like, it has quite a few things in terms of the way the forms are built and all that kind of stuff. One thing to note is Formic is another library. So yet again, we're asking for another library to come in. And notice what's happening here is it takes the place of state, right? So we don't used to use state for the form itself, but rather we're creating our own form, field, and button with Formic. So Formic has its own way of doing things. So definitely we could use something like this, because it has a lot of stuff, a lot of built-in functionality. And if you look at the docs, it talks about why not using a regular React form and so on. And there's a lot of reasons for this that they talk about here. So this is definitely a way of doing it. And there's other ones too. Okay, so we'll get back to this, but we fixed part of it. If I click login, right, let me just go back to that site there. Let's just save the page. If I click login by itself now, it's going to say authentication failed, and that's okay. So if I click cancel, right, cancel prevents default behavior. We haven't dealt with a cancel, what happens when we cancel the form, as an example. So that's something we should fix, regardless of what we do. And why is that? Because right here we have an on submit handles the the form on submit. And what about if I have an on, is there an on cancel of some kind, right? Is there an on cancel? So I want to be able to cancel or on reset, right? There's the on reset, and it's a form handler. That's what we want to handle, right? So I want to do the same thing where I want to say on reset is equal to some function, and we could have handle reset. What happens to that? So let's see if we can capture it just the same way as we did before. So I'm going to have another function that says, which is going to be the reset function. So the handle login. Let's see if this works. We'll call this handle reset. We'll have an event of type any, right? And for now, let's just do a message. So we'll do a console log. Let's see if it actually works. If I say something like form canceled, right? For now, or we'll say form reset. How about that? Form reset, right? And we'll output that to the log. If we on reset, we'll have handle reset. There we go. And that is an event that triggers. Okay, so let's try this out, refresh. And if I click cancel, right, then does it actually print anything? Hey, look at that, form reset. Login actually does this error, right? But cancel, every time we click cancel, it handles the reset. All right, so that's interesting. So what do we want for reset to do? Again, be careful, because if I want these form fields to be reset, right, as an example, you know, how, you know, do I reset a form? And you can look that up. So if you say something like reset form in React, how do I do that, right? So clear and reset form input fields. This is kind of the typical logic that you could use, right? Where, so now we're using controlled fields, right? So that's something. So there's controlled and uncontrolled fields, and we're using controlled fields, all right? That's what we're doing here, right? So if your form didn't have an ID attribute, you could use a ref as well. But basically what this is, we want to call the ID reset, whatever the ID is. If, for example, if we have a thing that says create course form, then we could definitely use a little bit of JavaScript to do it. That's what this is. So JavaScript, let's reset the form, right? Or here it says, you know, if this is the cancel as an example, then it'll handle this thing, clearing it with control fields. That's like, because we have those things. There's our value, right? On change, this handle input change, and cancel course. As an example, we're going to say input value 1, 2, 3, and we want to set this up. But that's the old way of doing it, and that is going to cause us to have our issues over and over again, you know, kind of things, right? So that is going to be an issue. Yep. So that's definitely one, but that's kind of, when we look back here, it talks about, right? So here's something, handle submit, and then target reset. That's interesting. So it resets the form. So target reset is maybe what we want to do. Let's see if we can do that instead. So going back here, we're going to say that the event, right? Let's try this out. Event target reset. So event.target.reset, right? And that's what we want to do for the event, right? So that way, maybe that'll help us do our thing. And we'll do, every time we press the cancel button, it'll kind of reset the form. Let's see if that works. So going back here, and if I go to login, and if I refresh, and if I type admin, but then I click cancel, well, that didn't quite do it, did it? It says form reset, but yeah, didn't reset the form, okay? So what about the other way, the document.get element by ID way, which is the other way of talking about it here. So they talked about a couple ways of doing it the old way with React. And one of the ways is using document.get element by ID, whatever the form name is, just do it that way. Okay, so if I was to do that, because this clearly didn't work, right? Document.get element by ID, it says, if you hover over, it says API usage examples, right? It says returns a reference to the first thing, and what is the issue? It says reset does not exist on type HTML element, right? Because you're trying to reset a form that doesn't exist, and TypeScript doesn't like this, right? So the reason why this is doing it is you need it in 2 lines. So it's going to be something like this. So if you say document.getElementById is going to return a, if you notice what it's going to return an HTML element type, right? And we're going to say that this is the form. So we're going to say let form is equal to document.getElementById, which is the form. This is one way of doing it, by the way. There's also document.forms, right? So let's do the other one. Document.forms, right? 0 is the only form on the, kind of on the, in the document. And if you notice here, if I hover over, it says it's an HTML form element, right? Well, if this is the truth, then I can do something like document.forms. And then I want to reset, right? Then shouldn't I be able to reset the form this way? And you can see that TypeScript doesn't complain about this because resetting will reset the form, okay? Cool, let's see if this works. And let's go back to this and see if this is better than it was before. So again, admin, and I want to click cancel, form reset, but you can see because this is a controlled element, right? You can see that this is a controlled element, it's not going to work. Even if I try and reset the form as much as I want, right? It's not going to wipe out what I put in here because it's handled by state. That's what's happening here. It's handled by the state and stuff, and which means that because I'm using controlled, elements here. So here's the example. These are all controlled because they're all stateful. Okay, so that's why this would fail. In real, if you try this somewhere else, as an example, if you said that if I had my handle reset, this thing here, which clearly triggers because we're getting form reset, right? The reason why this can't work is because it's being overridden by React, right? That's what's happening. Okay, so let's go back. So we'll go and look at it again. So clear, again, clear reset React form hooks, right? Let's see if that works. So use reset function from the React hook library if you execute this function. Okay, cool. Let's see what that does, because that's definitely something we want to do. Okay, so now this is different. So now look where it says we have React hook form. So that's another thing we haven't used, right, as an example. And here, again, we have validation. We create a validation schema, and we're using a whole different way of doing things. But here, take a look. We have our user and set user. And what we're basically doing is, we can set our user to null when we want to reset. That's what the reset user does. Reset user is something that we want to do, right? But reset comes from a, so use state and use effect is kind of what we're doing right now. But where does reset come from? Because reset itself, this thing right here, the user data, that's what we want to do, this part right here. Notice here we have only a handle submit, so it doesn't have, in this particular example, it doesn't have a other hooks that it has in here as well. So yeah, that would be awesome if we could reset the form, but we're using use form. Okay, use form. And use form, take a look here, const use form, and these are form options, right? Where form options is, we have a validation schema that goes through and uses a, uses use form for this. That's what this use form does, okay? So, okay, cool. And that basically validation schema, what it helps us with is if there's a problem with, like it says here, our title, our first name, or our last name in this particular form, it says that they're required, number one. And so this is definitely something we can use, which is React hook form. Okay, so that's definitely a thing. That's one. So it says use form reset, React hook form reset. What if I just want to React form reset and I want to do it, React form reset, right? We want to kind of do the trouble that we're having, which is not working. So it's reset not working. Unable to reset input fields. Yeah, but of course we're not being able to, because it's React.js is what's happening, right? Which is what's going on. And if you look down, there's a few answers, and it really talks about the state or whatever of the form itself, right? And it says, so set state when we reset to blah, 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 which is kind of what we did. Kind of use the state and we set state. But this won't work with us because this is an uncontrolled form, and we're doing our own. Okay, so that's why it's not working there. And then it goes back to React hook form, right? So that is the issue. That is the problem that we're having. So we can't reset, because if I go back to our form right here, if we try and do this, because React is dealing with those things all together, that is a bad thing. And if, like I said, if in the handle reset, for whatever reason, I decide that I want to, I decide that I want to clear up my username and password, then the problem with this is, because we have an on change happening here, we're listening for those things to change, right? Then that is an issue. Okay, that is an issue. So going back to this, let me show you again. So if I was to do that, so this is not clearly going to work, but if I'd say something like set our username, right, and we set our username to blank, let's do this again. So to prove this to you, and set password to a blank, and we're only going to do this when the user pressed the cancel button. All right, so that's when this is going to happen. Let's go back to this and show you how this works without using any extra stuff. Okay, so if I refresh, and if I go A and click cancel, then it resets, no problem. It does exactly what we're looking at doing. Take a look at that. So admin, and then I do 1, 2, 3, and then I just click cancel. It cancels the form nicely. Beautifully works exactly how we want. Okay. But what if I want to call handle reset right here inside of our login? Is that possible? So I have an error, and then I want to handle reset. Well, I have a problem. So if I do handle reset, can I do that? Can I just call handle reset by itself, right? And it says an argument for type event was not provided. Well, we can provide an argument, right? What if I provided null, right? So I want to say, well, there's no argument, so I'm just providing null because I'm handling it on my own, right? So I'm actually calling this event handler right from here. Is that possible? Can we do that kind of thing without causing an issue? Well, let's see. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go admin, and then press 1, and then click login, and then it says authentication failed, and it reset the form. Okay, what? How can this be? How can this work? So, oh man, this is exactly the functionality that I want. Only thing I want to do different is I want to highlight the first form and get myself into this tab again. That'd be awesome, right? Or instead of resetting, I want to highlight an entire thing. Again, those are other little effects we can make. But for now, that's not bad, right? Oh, look at this. Resetting the form does not reset this. That's also something that has to happen. So when we reset the form, set password, set username, we're also going to set message. And we'll set the message, as an example, to nothing as well, because we want the message to go away. We want to reset the form, right? But if I do that, then the message goes away, and I don't have the exact thing that I want. Yeah, sorry, I'm getting spammed again. Endless spamming. Wow, it's crazy today. I haven't seen it that bad ever. That's what happened. Okay. Craziness. Okay, sorry about that. So this is the problem, because if I was to reset the message, if I set message to this, when I call the handle reset method, if I do that, oh, that would be an issue, wouldn't it? Right? Because yes, I want to do this for sure. I want to be able to do this. But if I reset the message, so example, if I did this and if I refresh and if I have a form like this and click login, well, yeah, it resets the form, but it also gets rid of the message. That's not what I want. So what if, I'm just putting it out there, handle reset does this, right? But, and also sets the message, but we want something else to handle reset here as well, right? So I want to almost like have another little function that's like clear form. And can this do the same thing? Because I want to do the same thing here. I want to call the clear form function. We also can make it so that it has an event, just in case we want to use it as an event. And here, what I can do is I can call clear form, right, instead, passing in null, right? And in here, what we also can do is have this set message to 0, right? This set message doesn't have to happen with clear form. It only happens with handle reset. Let's see if that makes a difference. So going back to this, refresh the form, admin, and then type in single letter, log in, and hey, it cleared the form and everything else. But if I click cancel, it also clears the message. Cool. Well, we can reuse these things, can we not? So if I said handle reset and it does this, which is done here, can't I just copy that and pass in the event? That I can do. That is clearly something that I can do. Something like this, right? So if this is the case, and if I refresh and I go to admin and click cancel, that works. And if I go to admin and push enter, that works too, right? Everything is golden, is what I'm saying. And that's my little, I don't know what you want to call it. It's kind of a quick and dirty, I would say, without using any additional libraries or anything like that. And the reason again for this is because we want to be able to handle form input data, because otherwise, what's going to happen is, we're going to get this issue. Any questions so far before we move on? And I put this up on GitHub because we need to do that. All right, let's put it up. So again, going back to the front end, we made that change. It works out okay. So I'm going to say something like clear git add dot git commit -m. And we'll say added simple form error messages to login page. Git push. And we also want to do some, kind of Git updates on the back end, because we also have back end changes. So on the back end, we have some back end changes. We can go to the back end. Let's add another one. And we'll say that git add dots, git commit -m, and we'll say updated controllers with message property. Git push. And that should take care of all of our changes to the front end and the back end. Okay. And we needed to do that, or else we wouldn't have the next functionality. So now that we have the functionality on here, and we had a couple of things here that we put together, these two little things. Well, we can use the same thing for the register form. So the register form, it also can have errors, right? It has errors when there is a message, and there's errors when there's a problem here. So remember that the error form, the register form, I'm just going to put this side by side here so we can see it. Actually, let's just use this to do it. So here is register and here is login, right? So if we were looking at it side by side, the register form and the login form are very similar. But one thing we're missing from the register form is this message and set message stuff. So let's put that in. So we'll put that in at the bottom. There we go. Message, set message. And we're going to scroll down, and we want this handle message event to come up. There we go, whatever that message happens to be. And that's going to be just underneath the on change events. All these on change events, just before the handle register, we want that to come up. Yay, awesome. We also want the two little handle clear form and reset form functions that we had before. Again, a little bit of duplication. We can think about how to use this somewhere else. If I had a form service, maybe I could have these things work over and over again, my own, making my own custom component later on, because this is kind of duplicated, right? It's almost like I need my own little class, my own little hook, and you can make custom hooks with React as well. All right, so there's my clear form, cool, and here's my handle register, and yeah, that's cool. I don't mind that. But down in here we have an on reset, but here in the form, we don't have an on reset. So let's add an on reset. So we'll say on reset, we're going to say the same thing, which is, let's just call handle reset. Handle reset. There we go. Right? That's the message for handle reset. And we also want to replace this part with our handle message, because just like we did before, handle message, right? That's what goes in there. So that takes care of that piece, right? And we actually need it to be a function. All right, so that handles the message. This handles the reset for the register form and stuff like that as well. And well, we also need one more thing, because inside of our, when we get information from our form itself, so again, we on change, blah, blah, blah. And when we actually handle the registration piece, this part, right? We have this auth service register, and it comes back with something, just like we did our handle login. It comes back with something, but right now we're ignoring it. See how we're not ignoring it here. We need to not ignore it here. We're going to get some data back, whatever that data happens to be, right? And instead of us navigating to the login page when we register, what if we're going to get an error? Well, we have an issue where if the data success is true, then we want to be able to, kind of get some information. Okay, so it says, now this is different, right? And can you tell me why it worked here, but it didn't work here? What do you think the difference is between the two? Well, here, Axios login returns a promise, whereas register does not return a promise. It returns a promise of type Axios, right? So that's the reason for it, right? Which means we need to make some changes on the service itself. So if I go to auth service, go to definition for auth service, and if you see here what we do differently, the login, right, returns the response data. That's what it returns out. So every time we go through, we always return the response data. However, when we do the register, we don't return the response data, but actually what we do instead is we only return the username and password and all this kind of stuff, right? So let me just fix this up here to make it the same. So instead of just doing it this way, which is what this does up here, we're going to say something like this. We're going to say, we'll return this, but we want to do something like, looks like this. Then, so we want to kind of do the same thing. I want to do the then down here. Then, if my response, if I get a response, right, I want to do something with this data, right? So this is us rewriting that back end. And if we can say that if my response, dot data token, if there's data, right? If we get a response back, then return that response, because we know we don't care about the token necessarily. We just want to return the response data. So return response dot data, which what it does, it converts our register function, if you look here, right, into a promise again, similar to what we did with our login. So that fixes this problem. And now success works. Okay, here's success. Success works. And now that success works, right, then we're going to navigate. If success is good, we're going to navigate to login, right? And we're going to reload the page. That's the positive effect. We're going to do that here, right? If success is working, that is good. However, what if it's not? And this is where that other case comes in, right? Which is this part. So we're going to set the message to whatever the message happens to be, and we're going to clear the form, which is what we want to do, exactly what we want there, right? So that's what was missing there. And otherwise, right, we don't want to reload the form. Now, this is if we have an error. This is like this here is if it's a Windows, like an actual error, and that's why I'm not resetting. I want, if there's a server error, I need to know about it. It needs to crash, right? Otherwise, what's going to happen is we'll never deal with it. So let's just put a server error in there as well. And that means that like we're getting a weird error that we're not even dealing with. There's nothing if it's come to this point, that's a bad error that we're getting. All right, so that's what's happening on the register side. So register, login, we've done all those changes. And now we can get rid of this. And let's try registering and getting that same error. So going back to the page and refresh. And I want to go back to register. And it gives me my register form. And let's see if we can register the same admin user. That should give me an error, right? Or what if the registration is incomplete? Can I register an object that's incomplete? I need basic stuff to come through. Well, that's something we never accounted for, right? If I click register, it should say registration failed. Hey, look at that, because there's not enough information here for that's going through. I need all that information or it's going to fail. So that worked great, right? Cancels the form. That's right from the solution. But if I put in a first name and a last name that's nothing, admin@example.com, and I want to re-register my admin user. So I want to do admin, and the password is 123456. And if this should also cause an error. So if I click register, it's going to say error, registration failed. And what it should do is reset the entire form. But it did reset the form. It only reset the parts we told it to reset. Username and password. It didn't reset all the rest of it. Okay, we need to handle that. So going back to this, we're almost there. We're almost there. Bear with me as we do this stuff. So this is the back end, but we want to handle the front end. So that's the front end. This is the front end. And on the front end, under the register, not login, but the register page, when we do our clear form, it's not just username and password we need to reset. We need to reset all of them. Username, password, confirm password, first name, last name, all that stuff. Let's do that. So username, password, set, confirm password, set, email address, and what's the other one? First name, last name, and first name and last name. Okay, so first name and last name also have to be reset. So set first name, set last name. Okay, all that has to be done because we're manually clearing the form. We're telling it, we're managing each variable because these are controlled fields. All right, that's what we're doing here. So save, and let's try and fix that up again. Let's go back and let's click cancel, and it did it. Right, so let's try it again. So if I try and register the same user again, admin@example.com, right? Admin, and then what we should see is if I click register, it's going to clear the form and say error, registration failed, because we've already tried to register that user twice. Nice, we just fixed the register form too. And we have some interesting things in there. So again, I'm going to go back here, and on the front end, we're going to say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added error messaging to the register page. Git push. All right, so we have all that now. So error messaging is back. Again, it looks convoluted, but if you want to keep it simple, you can. All right, it's not impossible for you to take care of that. And the idea here is that you want to handle everything with the hooks that we already have. We don't need to complicate matters. We're not doing validation yet. That's not part of what we're doing here. So if I wanted to do more complex validation, then yeah, I could include Formic or React hook forms. That's okay too. But we're not doing that here. We're just trying to make it so that whatever functionality we had on before, we have now. That's what we're trying to do. Okay. Cool. Now that that's done, let's get to getting actual data. Woohoo! That's going to be a whole other thing to do. So we had the movie list pages, but we don't have any movie list pages right now. We want to make those movie list pages come out, right? And we need a service. We need a service to return the movie list. Right now we have our auth service and our auth header, but we need some other services like our movie list data service. That's what we want to make. Let's make a new service. So new file. We'll call this the movie list data service. Again, sometimes people do this. Movie list data, right? And dash service, like dashes. Some people do it like this, where they say, the movie list, service, and that's enough, right? I'm going to leave it like this, movie list service, right? .tsx, and keep it easy. You can do it different ways. Remember, it's going to break our form at our stuff at the beginning because we have that issue. Now we need to get access to our common component. So that's the first thing we want to import. We're going to import HTTP from, and it's going to be // components / HTTP common. We want to get that back in there because we want to use, remember, HTTP, our common component is, this is the Axios component that we're getting in the first place. Woohoo! Okay, so that's what this does. So that's the first thing we want to do. Next, I want to import our, I don't really have a, kind of a movie list model right now, and I want to import the movie list model. So let's create one before we move on. So under models, all we have is our user, and it'd be nice if we had our movie, because that's what we need too. No movie, no anything. So let's do that here. So in models, we'll make a brand new file, and we'll call this the movie model, right? Movie. And all the movie model is going to be similar to user, where movie is just going to be an interface like this. So I'm just going to copy this just to save some time, and we'll put it in here. So export default interface. Instead of iUser data, we're going to call this the iMovie data, right? And what do movies have that we want to get from them, right? Well, we know we have all of those fields that we want to access, right, from our movie. Okay. What movie fields do they have? And by the way, they should match the data that we want exactly, right? Whenever we create a model of type movie data, remember that it should match what we're storing in the database, the exact way we're storing it. Well, that's a question for the backend. So going back to the backend, what does our movie list look like from a model perspective here? Well, it looks like we have name, year, director, and rating. So we can just grab these, right, for now. And I'm going to copy these things right now and see if they're good enough. And I'll bring them to the front end. So bringing it to the front end right here and just punch it in, right? Lowercase s for string. So name, year, director, and rating. That's what our model looks like right now. And I think for now, I want to keep it just like this, right? But we also know that movie data also includes an ID, all right? So we need to add that in there too. So we're going to say that movie data also includes an ID, which is optional. Question mark means optional. And it's going to be either of type any or null. And this is kind of a key learning because you don't know what this data is going to be. It could be a string. It could be something else that we get from the database, depending on the database. But this is kind of what we want from our movie data. Okay, save. So now that we have our movie data, let's put this up on GitHub. So git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say added movie model, right? Git push. So there's our movie model. We haven't completed our movie list service, and that's why it's still not saved. That's cool. And what we want to do here is we want to import it now. So now that we have our movie model, then inside of our movie list service, I want to be able to add in, the model that we have that we're going to use. Okay, so we're going to say that let's import the movie model, we'll say, from the // models slash movie. Okay, so that's what we want. So movie model now represents a an interface. That's what it is, the movie model interface. All right, excellent. Next, I also want to import the auth header. Import, we'll call this auth header from // auth header. So actually it's just / auth header because it's here. It's inside the same service. Because our auth header is going to be used to check to see if I'm logged in before I can see the movie list at all. Right? So that's what the auth header is going to help us do. And finally, we're going to make a new, now again, last time with our auth service, we used a class called auth service. We're going to do the same thing for the movie list for now. So I'm going to say, let's make a new class called the movie list, data service. This is the movie list data service. And the movie list data service class is going to have a bunch of different things that we're going to do. One, I want to read all. Let's try the read all first. So read all, right? The read all function, that's what the read all function is going to do. It's going to return what? We're going to use http.get, and we're going to get an array, that's what we're getting, of what type of data? It's going to be of type movie model. That's what we're going to try and get the array of. This is self-closing. So that's what we want. We want to get the array, and we want to navigate, right? That's what we're going to do here. We're going to navigate to the movie list, right? That's what we want to do, okay? And we're going to pass in the auth header. There's our auth header, and that auth header is going to check to see if we're logged in. So our auth header, we're going to get this from the bearer token. When we go to read all, it's going to return a promise. That's what it's going to do, right? Read all is going to read the data. I'm going to do a get request, and the get request is going to be from the movie list. Remember, HTTP, right? That's from this. Let's go to definition. Go to definition means it's going to have, it's the full URL. The request is going to be http://localhost 3500 API/ contact list, right? Or movie list in this case. So if I go back to the, the service, let's go back to that movie list service, it'll be the movie list. And if I go back to the back end, here's the back end. And if I look at the routes, right, we can see for the movie list route, we have this movie list will take us to display movie list, go to definition. And this will basically return JSON data that has two parts. Success is true with a message that says movie list displayed successfully, plus a movies array, which is of type movies collection, and a user. That's what it's going to request if we're logged in. It's going to return that bearer token. If we're logged in, we're going to take that bearer token and return this thing back out. That's what this read all method is going to do. Okay, I like it. And for now, all I want to do is read the movie list, okay? So that's what I want to do. So this is the extent of my movie list data service. And what I want to do is I want to export it. So I want to save it by export default, and I want to export a new movie list data service object, okay? And that is going to be created every time I ask, kind of go to this movie list service. Nice. So that by now, it's just the first version of my movie list data service. And that's going to mean something that I'm going to just to return data, example from my my backend. Get add get commit -m, and we'll say added v1 of movie list data service class. There we are. Awesome. All right, so that is my my movie list data service, but we haven't used it and we haven't tested it. Now up here, it's okay because we're here. I want to be able to, when I log in, I want to be able to go to the movie list page and see a list of movies. That's what I want to do. And we don't have a movie list component. We need that and we'll put this in the movie list components here. So we have our authentication, and in here we have our movie list components that we're going to go in here as well. Okay, so we need that piece. So, all right, how does that work? Well, I need a new movie list and I want to display the movie list. So let's put a brand new movie list in here. So under movie list, let's add a new file. We'll call this, there's different ways of doing it, but it's almost like I want to go to movie list. So the same thing. So movie list.tsx. That's my movie list component. And my movie list component is going to be, I'm going to import React. It's going to be a real component, right? I'm also going to use state. I want to use, use state. And I also want use effect. I know that that's going to be the case. And I want to, of course, get this all from React, right? There we go. So that's the first thing I want. I also want to import our link. We're going to have links inside the page, right? From React-router DOM. There it is. I'm also going to import the movie list data service, movie list data service, this one, from, and then it's going to be /services/ movie list service. There it is. And I'm also going to import my movie data, so the movie model from /models/movie, right? I want that too. So those are the header that I want. I'm going to make a new function, and the new function is going to be called the movie list. Remember, this is the component, and of course, it's going to return something. And I'm going to export default the movie list. All right, that's what I want to do. In the return, this part, that's where the movie list data is going to come from. And we have this information, a sample of this, kind of in our back end. So again, going back to the back end, I'm going to go to the views, content, movie list, this EJS page. I want to grab this entire thing, Control A, copy. This is my entire thing. And go into my return here on the front end and paste. All right, so this is where it's going to go. All right, but as we know, we have to replace class by, so Control A, Control F. We want to replace class, any kind of thing where it says class, we want to replace it with class name. This is the first thing. There we go, class name. Replace all that. That's going to serve some functionality. We have this repeatable row area, which, well, that's just not going to work anymore, right? We want to make a repeatable area, and that is something we're going to have to do slightly differently. For now, we're going to have to leave this in here, okay? We're going to get back to this, but we have to replace this part. This repeatable row, first of all, this is going to be a comment. So remember, we need to use a JSX comment. This is our repeatable rows. That's what this is, right? And we're going to put this in here like so. So those are our repeatable rows. So repeatable rows go in here. Okay. And we can't use a for loop like this. We're not going to use a for loop like this, but it's going to be fairly similar. So for now, I'm just going to leave this part in here. This is to be, kind of put back in. So for now, I'm just going to put a comment that goes from here to here. And again, this is a multi-line comment you can put in. And just like as before, I'm going to put an opening tag and down here a closing tag so that all of this is commented out. That's another way of doing it with React, because we don't have to have this in right now. I don't have any errors while I'm doing this. And then we'll comment it out in a second. All right, excellent. So this is exactly what we had before. All right, so there's our href. Href can't be. Remember, href needs to be converted to a link. So we're going to make this a link. And that's going to be the add button, right? It's going to be a to. And we're going to make, we don't have this route right now, but to add. We're going to get the add route going in a second. Okay, so that's the add movie. That's going to take care of this part. And that's nice. I like that. So how about the rest of it? How do we make the movie list work? Well, we need, remember, our destructured array at the top and a couple of additional things here that we're going to have in. So we're going to have a const, here's a destructured array, and we're going to have a movies array, and we're going to have set movies. So set movies is going to be part of it, and this is going to be equal to use state, where we're going to say that in this case, use state is going to be an array of type movie model. Movie model. All right, that's what it's going to be. And so this is kind of an interesting way of doing it. It says, here's the array, we're casting it, and we're saying that we're going to instantiate an empty array at the beginning. So interestingly enough, if I hover over movies now, movies is going to be a movie model array. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So that's what we're saying here. This is the syntax for creating an array in use state as opposed to the way we did it before. Use effect, we need to put that into place as well. Use effect, well, we have a couple of things, right? So use effect is going to be, for now, I'm just going to use the, starting up. I want to change the document.title. I want the document.title to equal to movie list, right? That's going to be the document title. That's going to change, right? So the movie list is something that we want to add in there, right? And we also want the dependency array to be empty, because if the dependency array doesn't have that, it'll keep on updating every time we update the use effect. It'll cause a problem, okay? That's what will happen. And what I want to do is I want to have a function, right? So when I come to this page, I read my movie. All right, so that's the function. So here's a new function. I'm going to call the function read movie, or movies. Let's say read movies. And read movies or get movie list or whatever you want to call it. We can also call it maybe something that's more descriptive, get movie list. All right. The get movie list function, right? We want to trigger it when we load the page. So that's going to be here, get movie list. We only want to do it once. So there's our get movie list method that's going to be triggered, right? And the get movie list method, what is it going to do? Well, it's going to, I'm going to go to the movie list data service, this one, and I'm going to say, hey, movie list data service, I want to read all, right? And when I read all, I want to, after I'm done reading, if there's a response, which is of type any, we're going to say, if there's a response, then what I want to do is I want to set movies, here's my set movies, to whatever the response data is, which is are the movies data that we're getting from the back end. So that's what I want to do. So where am I getting response.data.movies? Movies, this part right here, well, that comes from, if you think about this, this comes from the back end. So if I go to the back end, remember what we're doing. So in the controller, in the movie list, right, when I do a display list page, movie list page, it's going to return success, a message, and movies. This movies is the movies collection, and the movies collection is going to be of type, in this case, an array of any, which is going to be sent over to the user. That's the response that we're going to get. Response.data.movies. Hey, that's awesome. And okay, but what about if there's an error? Well, we want to do a catch, and we're going to catch E for error, which is of type error, and it's going to be, we're going to console log that. Console log the error, whatever that happens to be. Okay, so that is kind of our little way of doing it. Okay, so now movies is going to be our array of movies. Huh, okay. Well, then how do I display this in the page in here? How do I display this in here? Well, we can't do this. We can't do the repeating rows just like this, but we can do something a little different from a React perspective. React handles repetition or repeating rows in a different way. So I want to kind of surround this thing still with curly braces. I want to do this. So I want to do that. But here, what I can say is, I want to say if there's movies, my contacts are in my head. If movies, and we can say movies.map, we can map to the movies are, for every movie, we'll call this of type movie model, The index will be a number, right? And what we'll do, right, is we'll have this little function. This is just a map function that we're going to use. And this little map function is going to be the thing that maps things. It says, cannot find a movie model. Did you mean movie model? Yes, I did. That's what I meant. So it says for every movie in the movie model, right? Basically, what I want to do is I want to map each movie to an index starting at 0. That's what I want to start doing. Okay. And that is the first part of our of our link, if you will. Okay, we don't need to put this in for now. Let's just leave that. What I want to do is I want to grab all of this and put it inside of its own return, all of this part. So I'm going to cut this out and I'm going to put this inside of a return statement, return, and the return statement is going to return a new object. That's what it's going to do, right? I'm just going to take these semicolons away. And the return object is going to be all that stuff, this stuff, right? But instead of me doing a new table row and all that stuff, I don't need this part. It's not going to be a for loop, so I don't need the EJS parts. I don't need that part at all. And this part is a comment, so let's replace this with a React comment. Going to use the same data. So that's all that. Okay, so that's the React comment that we're going to have. So I want to be able to embed a React comment. Bear with me. And if we have to get rid of it, I will. For the table row, what I want is the key is going to equal to our index. That's what we want it to be. We're going to impose that index in there. Okay. And it's just not liking this right now for some reason. There we go. Let's just get rid of that. I guess it doesn't like a comment there in the return. And that's fine. I'll put it back in a second. Scope is row, text center. And instead of this here, where we had in EJS, we're just going to use index plus 1, just like we did with EJS. So we're just going to count the index. For every index, we're going to start at 0, index plus 1. And here, instead of using EJS, we're just going to use curly braces. So we're going to say curly brace and curly brace at the end for this piece. So if I say curly brace, and instead of movies count, I'm just going to say it's going to be the movie, because that's what we're looping over, the movie.name. For every movie, I want to impose the movie.name in here. All right, that's what I want. So really, it's like I want to do this part, right? I'm not counting anymore. I'm just going to do this part every single time. So I want to kind of do this. Let me fix that up in a second. So it does a map. It's mapping is what I'm doing. I'm using a map function instead of a for loop. I'm using kind of like a for each loop. That's what it kind of is. And so what the map function will do is it'll loop through here just the same as we did before, right? And it'll go, okay, I want to inject all this. Now, if I put a semicolon in here, as an example, it's not going to complain. I can put a semicolon in here, and it's going to complain because this is part of my map, and it doesn't like this semicolon that's in here. All right, I'm just telling you from a syntax perspective when it's complaining. And also inside of here, if I was to try and put this comment style that we had before, it also will complain at this point. All right, so comments not appreciated here. Even if I do something like this, that I can do because this is a return the return step, and I can do something like, so here, that's where we're going to have our repeating row, or create a new row, which is what we're doing here, right, for the movie. So this is a comment that works in here. Why? Because this is part of this, and it sees this as a comment, but whereas here, it doesn't like it when I put inside of the T body, because this is inside of our JSX. Here, this is actually me doing a return, almost like a little function that I'm injecting in real time. I could actually do this movie map thing instead of doing it like this. I can make this into a little function that kind of injects all this in here instead. And maybe we'll do that at another day. What about this other stuff? So this stuff is also wrong. So text center is good, but this can't be an href. It's got to be a link. So again, a link. This is going to be 2, right? And we're going to put curly braces over here, right? Where this is going to be our entire link, that link right there. So /edit, and instead of this movies count, can't be like this. It's almost like we want to put more curly braces, which is exactly what we're going to do here. So we're going to say curly brace movie, right? And we're going to say movie dot ID. Remember that ID is going to be there, and we're going to close it off like so. So a couple curly braces in here as well. So it's almost like curly braces inside of curly braces, but the way I've got to put that in there is with a $sign. So if I put a $sign in there, that is going to indicate that I'm going to inject that stuff inside of there. Sometimes what I like to do is put single quotes instead of double quotes, because then it becomes more apparent what I'm doing, right? So this is kind of looking like it's pretty good. That's our link. Class name and all that stuff is the same. This is kind of a link. This is the style that it's going to look like. And here, instead of a, when we delete, we're not going to actually go to delete. We're going to make it a button. So we're going to change this to a button. And the button is going to have an on-click event. On click. And what we can do is the on-click event can be actually inline. So we can say on-click. We're going to say that when we're clicking, right, then how do I want to delete that movie? We're going to actually confirm delete. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to have a little delete function that's going to do this deletion in a second. So that's what I want to do with the on-click event, right? And so the on-click event is going to call, and as you can see, there's 2 parts of it. I have my outer curly braces and my inner curly braces. And my inner curly braces is going to call a function called confirm delete. I don't have that function yet, but I'm going to pass in the contact, or the movie in this case, movie._ID. So that's what I'm going to pass into the confirm delete function. I'm not going to do this here, right? I'm not going to do all of this part, right? This part here is going to be handled somewhere else, right? So we can just get rid of all this for now. Actually, let's cut it out of here for now, and maybe I can paste it out somewhere else. So this is the way it's going to be done when I do deleting. I can't do delete yet because I don't have that functionality. I can only do a list. So how do I do the confirm delete? Well, let's put just for now a confirm delete stub that allows me to do, so we don't have an error. So again, here another function. We're going to call this confirm delete. We're going to take in an ID, which is a string type. That's what we're going to get in there because that's what it's going to give us. And we're going to say if, and we want to confirm that it's true. If not, window.confirm as an example. And we're going to say something like, are you sure? Right? Are you sure? This is kind of like a little JavaScript function that we had on the back end. Then we want to do a couple things. I want to refresh the movie list. All right, I want to be able to do that. And I also want to call the delete contact method, right? Which we don't have right now. Okay, so delete contact. I'm going to pass in the ID of the contact here, and delete contact. Let's make another little function for this. So function delete contact, which was going to take an ID of string. We're just passing through the string here, and we're going to say we're going to call the movie list service, and we're going to delete the ID that we've got from the contact. So call the movie list service and delete the movie. That's what we're going to do here. Okay, we don't have that functionality yet, but that's what we're going to do. And so we can call this when we're ready to go. That's what it's going to happen. It's going to pass through the confirm delete, right? And if it's true, we're going to get all of this functionality down. For now, all I want to do is I want to see the movie that comes up here for us. Again, guys, we're going to run a little bit over time, and I need 2 minutes, and I'll be right back. So I'm going to take a short break, 2 minutes. I'll keep recording, and I'll be right back after the break. So 2 minutes. So right now we're looking at 2:23. I'll come back around in 3 minutes. Let's say 3 minutes. Okay, I'll be right back. And we're back. Okay, so a couple things we did here. So we did this, and we added a repeatable row and all this kind of stuff. Great, and we were able to get the movie list, but we need to test it. Save. One thing is we also have to export the movie list page, and notice that there is it's red, right? And red says it's untracked, right? And the way to check this if it's broken is if I go back out to the page right? And you can see here it's broken, right? It says movie list. It says expected some kind of responding closing tag for link, and it says li. So that's the error. Look at that, right? Didn't quite do the link tag in movie list, and I can actually go here and fix it. And if I do that and press save, now we're back into operation. Awesome. Okay, that's great. So we have a movie list component we want to test, but we can't test it without another component which we need, which is, well, we need to import this inside of our of our links, right? We need to import this inside of my app.tsx, right? Because I want to be able to get to this when I go to the movie list, right? So how do I do that? So under services, so I have services, contact, right, as an example. And then before my login, I'm going to have my movie list component. So I'm going to something like, let's get a new route. I'm just going to make some space in here because I'm going to add some new ones in here. And this is going to be the movie list. This is on the front end. And I'm going to impose the movie list in here as well. The element is going to be a movie list. So movie list. Okay, cool. And the movie list component doesn't compute, so it needs to be imported. So we'll import from movie list, but it can't be here because this is, I want it to be imported before everything else. It's going to go here in the movie list component. So this is going to add the movie list component in, save. Now there's an issue. There's an issue. What if I refresh and if I go to movie list here, movie list. If I go there, it's going to be empty. It's going to show the movie list, but nothing is going to be there. And let's see what happened on the back end. Well, if I go to the back end, you can see it's a 401, which is unauthorized. Okay, so it's good. Didn't return any data, but it's bad because it let me get here. Well, that's okay. Well, let's log in. What if I logged in? So logged in. And I log in normally. There we are. And then I go to my movie list page. Now, let's say, because I'm logged in, I have a token. And what if I go there now? So if I go to movie list, oh man, so movie list still shows blank. Okay, well, let's see what's happening back here. Okay, well, if I refresh, right, it did a 401. Take a look at that. Movie list 401. And if I do it again, you can see it's still giving me a 401 as if it doesn't know what the bearer token is. Let's take a look here. So it says Axios error. So it's an error accessing stuff. This is a different kind of error, right? And it says unauthorized. It's giving me this error that's unauthorized, right? Well, okay, that's interesting. What about on my application? I do have my token. Here's my token right here, right? So my token is here, but I'm not able to see my stuff. What did I do wrong? And let's do some troubleshooting because my token is there clearly, right? But it's giving me a 401. Okay. Let's go back and troubleshoot. So on the front end, we said, go to the movie list service. Go to the movie list service. So this is clearly working because it's routing. Routing, this routes to the component, which is our movie list component, this one right here. And the movie list component calls, as soon as I get here, it calls get movie list. Get movie list calls the movie list data service, and it calls the read all method, right? And it sets the movies to this method. Otherwise, it outputs this error, which is what we're getting. We're getting an error right here. Okay, cool. So set movies is what's happening, but we're not able to read. Go to definition. Go to definition. Okay, and it says read all HTTP get, and I want to go to the movie list page, and I want to pass in my auth header. Auth header, right? So let's, before we do this, right, let's, the auth header piece to this whole thing, right? So again, under services, auth header, what does auth header do for us? So far, we've never used auth header until today, right? So let's go back to auth header and take a look. So auth header, I mean, it's very simple. It basically says, I want to use, I want to have a user string. The user string is going to be get user, and I want to let the user be null. If the user string exists, then I want to JSON.parse the user string. And, well, okay. And if not, if the user exists and there's a user token, um, then what I want to do is I want to return headers, and this is important, authorization bearer, right? And this is the error right here, my friends. See this space? That is the error. Space user token. That was the problem. It was this little space in my auth header. And the reason why I know is you need to, the bearer itself is going to be added to the token, and that's what's missing. Okay. But how does this work anyway? Right? Because again, we're trying to do something. Well, this part right here, what it does is it looks inside of the user item inside of local storage. If I look back at what we had, here is local storage, right? It's looking in the user item, the user key, looking inside here, and we're looking for a token. That's what it says. Okay, so user string, I look inside there. If it exists, then I want to parse it as JSON. And then I'm saying, okay, user, if the user exists and a user has a token, both of them have to exist, then return this, otherwise return empty, and that's what we've been returning on error the entire time, okay? And really what we're saying is, this is kind of like an else, right? We don't need this else, but let's suppose it looks like this, right? That's what it looks like, right? And let's try it again. So going back here, and if I refresh, then ta-da, I've got my movie list. And what about errors? It says, warning, encounter 2 children with the same key index. Key should be unique. It says, maintain their identity across updates. No non-unique keys may cause to be duplicated and or omitted. Okay, so this is a bit of an error. It says React DevTools backend. I'll come back to this. But take a look. We got the list. We got the list of stuff here, and we never had this list before. So this is pretty cool that we're able to get the data, and it was from one simple change. Great, that's our read. Let's put this up on GitHub, and then we'll deal with the error, okay, in a second. So going back to this, we're going to say git add dot, git commit -m, and then added, read functionality. For movie list. Hit push. But it'd be really nice if we saw the movie list inside of our header component, right? Our header component doesn't really show the movie list right now. All it does is toggle login, and toggle login does not show our information. Wouldn't it be nice if we saw the movie list link that was in here as well? That would be really, really nice. And I'm mentioning this because that is missing. We have to actually type in our movie list, and we don't want that at all, okay? We also want to, kind of, if I'm logged in, I want to also be able to, toggle my movie list when I'm logged in. Okay, so that requires another function. So again, notice that I have my set as login, and that's very nice, and this is all good. I like it. I want to make a brand new function where instead of toggle login, this is inside of my header now. I want to make a function for toggle my movie list, toggle my movie list, because either I have it or I don't, right? And if is logged in, I'll check to see if I'm logged in. This is also the same thing. Then what I want to do is I want to return, right? And I want to return that movie list link that I had before. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So what I want to do is I want to grab that from the back end. Let's go back to the back end. And I want to go to the views components header. And my views components header has this movie list item right here, this list item. This is from the back end. Copy it. I want this. And I want to take this and I want to put it on the front end, which is this part. I want to kind of put it in there. So Control V. But we have to replace class name, class with class name. That we have to do. We also have to make this it's an anchor tag right now, but we need to convert it to a nav link. Nav link, okay? And of course, the nav link needs a 2 instead of an href. I'm just going to cut the href out of here, and I'm going to put it at the beginning just to make sure that we're matching our style. And this is going to be a 2, and in curly braces, I'm going to go to the movie list. There we go. So exactly what we had before. Here, we don't need this part. This is all garbaggio from Express. So we can get rid of all this. This is just changing the title, the link. Again, this has to be class name because that is, the font awesome, kind of class name that we're going to use here. And so far, so good. Let's say save. Where do I put my toggle movie list? Well, I want to put my toggle movie list between my contact link and my toggle login link, login or log out. So here, I'm just going to put in toggle movie list, right? That's where that goes. And of course, we need it to be a function call like this. So first, I'm going to toggle my movie list. Am I logged in or not? And if I'm logged in, I can change that link. I could have put these together, but I wanted to show it to you how you can do it separately, just like this. Otherwise, I could have put this part in here like we did before, okay? I'm just doing it separately to show you that you can make it separately as well. Not a problem. All right, save. And when I did that, if everything goes well, then if I go back to here and if I log out, you can see instantly that there's no movie list. But if I log in, then we get the movie list link, which is right here, where I can just see the movie list here again. So that pops up. Nice, excellent. Well, now we want this movie list to, when we log in, to go here instead of going to the home page. And that was a change that I kind of marked that we need to put it in the first place. So if I go back to my login service or my login, component, which is this one, notice that we're going home. We don't want to go home. We want to go to the movie list. That's where I want to go. And let's, do that by logging out. And then when I log in this time, right, it's going to take me right to the movie list, which is what I want. Okay, so that's the movie list. Awesome. Okay, and that's the first piece. So now I'm able to navigate there, no issues. Excellent. Let's put this up on GitHub. Git add dot, git commit -m, and I'll say added movie list link. Git push, which is kind of what I wanted. All right. So that's the movie list link that's added in, and it looks nice. It even says movie list at the top there and all that stuff. Let's log out. And the next piece that I want to do is I want to handle the adding, editing, and deleting. I want to be able to add, edit, and delete new movies. All right, well, there's two parts to this, right? The one part is inside of the movie list service. And also, one more thing. If I go to movie list right now, right? If I go to movie list, it's going to take me to this empty movie list, and I don't want that, right? I want it so that it says, nope, you're not authorized, and it's going to take me to the login page. I need an auth guard on the front end. That's what I need, an auth guard on the front end. We don't have that yet, so let's make that happen now. I think that's a good place to put it in before we add any other components. So again, what we want is a require auth or an auth guard or something like that we want to call it. This will be inside of our authentication section. I want to make a brand new component, so new file. And the new file is going to be called, and again, you can call this auth guard or require auth. I'm just going to call it a guard, so it's going to be called auth guard, right? I'm just thinking about this. Auth guard might just be one word like this for me, .tsx. You could consider it different ways. There's my auth guard. For auth guard, the way it's going to work is I'm going to import React from React. I want that. I want to have a function. We're going to call this function auth guard, right? Auth guard. And I want to export default auth guard. Again, this is just the basic pattern is what we're looking at here. The basic pattern for creating stuff. Okay, in the function authGuard, we need some more things. We need to be able to navigate. So I'm going to say import navigate. And then it's, and also I want to do something else called use location. This is kind of a neat little thing. Use location is another hook that we can use, okay, or another function. And we're going to get it from React Router DOM. So that's kind of coming from React Router DOM, use location. And we're going to say import, and I want to import the auth service, right? So that's the auth service. So auth service from, and then it's / authentication or services / auth service. There we are. Oops. That's the auth service. Okay. And if you remember what that is, auth service is allowing us to log in, log out, and register. Okay. And also get user, which is what we want to do here. We want to get user. So let's see how this is going to work now in authGuard. So what authGuard is going to say is, let's take in a couple of additional things inside of authGuard. So the authGuard function is going to take in some children. This is interesting. And the children is going to be an array, right, or of type. And we're going to say children, which is JSX. This is interesting, a JSX element. So I can pass in a child JSX element in here, and that's what this will accept. authGuard is waiting for a JSX element to come in here. So I can pass in things like the movie list. That's an element. Okay. And what I want to do with it is, let's do this. Let auth equal to the auth service. This one, auth service dot, and I want to get current user. And let location equal to use location. That's just an alias. And what we want to say, if not auth dot user, if the user doesn't exist when I'm authenticating, remember what's going to happen is auth is going to return a user object. If auth doesn't exist, right, then what I want to do is I'm going to return, and this is kind of neat. We've done this before. I want to navigate. Navigate means I want to navigate away, right? And it's a self-closing tag. I want to navigate. And where I want to navigate, I want to navigate to the login page. Okay, that's what I want to do. Navigate to the login page. And I want to change the state. This is kind of interesting. You can actually change the state right in here, where the state is from location, right, is what I want to pass in. Okay, so this is how it's working. So basically what I'm saying is I'm passing in the location that I'm coming from, and I'm navigating to the to the login page if there's no user. Okay. Otherwise, if there is a user, we can skip all that stuff and just return back out the children. So we're just going to pass through the child element that's passed in here. Okay, so really what this is our own custom middleware function. That's what it is. And this middleware function, but it's on the front end, not on the back end. All right, which is kind of cool. All right, so how do I use this thing, this authGuard? Well, I can put it inside of my app.tsx. That's where it's going to be. So inside app.csx right now, let's just close this off. You can see that I have my path, right, to my router right here. And instead of going directly to the element in here, we can basically do something like this. Let's just cut the movie list element out of here. Okay, so I'm cutting this out. And inside the element, I'm going to use authGuard. And the authGuard element, let's put the authGuard element in, authGuard, right? That's the authGuard element, / there we go. authGuard is unknown, so we're going to add it in. And we're going to put this here, on the authentication pieces, this part right here, this is where it's going to go. That's authguard. And it doesn't like the name authguard. It should be auth-guard or something else. I'm fine with it right now. And that's authguard, but authguard requires children. And so what we can do is we can pass in a child that's inside of it. For example, something like movie list. So inside of authguard, right? So it would be something like this. Okay. And let's just get rid of this closing tag. Inside of authguard, there's an inner tag that we can use, which will be the child, which is movie list. Okay, closing tag. And that's kind of what we want to do. We want to pass in this closing tag and all this kind of stuff. So what's the issue here? Expects a single child of type element, but multiple children were provided. What did I do? Just looking at my notes here. Passing multiple children. Maybe the spaces it doesn't like. I mean, that's interesting. There we go. No spaces. All right. Um, so yeah, so that's the way it works. And so that this should guard the page now. Let's try this out. This is our new thing when it comes to guarding our individual pages, which is going to settle off our security. All right. So going back to the page, let's see if it's still broken. Okay. It says module not found, error, cannot find index.js, does not match the corresponding name on disk. Index.js. Authentication authguard. Match not found. Module not found. What did I not do? Movie list. Did I not save the authguard? Index.js. Okay, that's weird. That's a first. That's what happens when you get to this little stage. Save. Let's make sure I save everything. Do I got everything saved? Save. Refresh. And let's go back one. Okay, so it's in 6026. So that's when authguard is 6. Okay. So here's the authguard auth service. We want children. Let me just check my notes, guys. I'm so sorry. But that is part of it. All right. Auth service. We get current user. We got here an auth. The location is use location. That's nice. If not, user navigate to login. That's correct. It looks all good to me. And we have a state from location. Replace that state with this, and we return children out. We have a default. I wonder if we should do this differently. I wonder if we should do something like export default function in one. I don't think that makes a difference, but export default function authguard. Could be the issue. JSX element of element type. Children is here. Okay. Auth service get current user. Location. Not service from React. Wow, this is interesting. Gate 2. Okay. Date. That's what I want. State is equal to this and login. I wonder if we have to pass in the state back into the app.tsx. So that is something else that we may want to do. Well, you know what we're going to do? Here's what we're going to do. I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to do navigate to login. All right, and let's see if this is going to fix it. Let's not use location for now. Let's see if that fixes the error. So refresh. Okay, so it says module not found, cannot find index.js, does not match the corresponding file on disk. Huh. Authguard.tsx. That's a weird thing. Maybe I should just recompile. That's done. It's almost like it doesn't exist. The Authguard TSX. Let's stop this. It's a compilation error almost, right? And let's do a yarn start again, almost like a recompile, just to make sure that that's not the issue. Filed with problems. 626. Index.js. Interesting. Okay, it says cannot find index does not match corresponding disk and node modules React index.tsx. Close all those off and go back to Authguard for a second. Isn't that interesting? That's a first. I'm just going to troubleshoot this, guys. I'm so sorry, but we need to put this in. So I'm just going to make sure that I'm not crazy. Import React. I'm going to go through here again. React navigation use location, and then I want to use the service, and I'm going to require auth through Authguard. Export default function. I don't think it's that. Pass in children. This is all good. It looks good to me. Pressing and return navigate. If I'm using here, maybe, well, we don't need it, but we can definitely use the semicolon here. I don't think that's the issue because it's giving me this weird cannot find file index.js. I'm gonna have to look that up. That's a new one. Module not found error. Let's look that up, guys. Not found, cannot find index.js. Does not match the corresponding. There we go. Please check the name. Oh, this is someone else's error. Maybe case sensitive issues do the same thing for file names too. Oh, are you kidding me? Oh my God. Wow. That's crazy. Okay. So that just called it React capital R instead of lowercase. It doesn't know that module. Of course it doesn't. Let's go back and put that stuff in there. So what I'm saying is, let's go back. Wow, that was insane. Okay, I'm going to come back to this location thing in a second. Let's see. All right, and I'll explain this in a second. Okay, save, and we don't need this thing. Thank you. That was nice. Login. Actually, if I don't log in, and if I go to /movie list now, it'll take me to the login page. See, nice, nice. And if I do log in, it takes me here and we're good to go. And it shows me log out, right? So if I log out, boom, boom, and if I try and go to the movie list page again, and again, it goes to log out. So that's our Authguard. Beautiful way of working. Everything works exactly as we expected it. And that is our little thing. Let's add that back in. And we'll just say, wow, that almost stumped me. Git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added auth guard function, which is a guard, right? That's what it all basically is. There we go. Okay, awesome. So that's that one. And so now that we've got our auth guard and we're able to safeguard our movie list, let's now add in the next pieces, which is going to be the next parts of our movie list, which is the add page. All right, so again, I want to go here to add movie list, new file. We're going to have add.tsx, okay? And in our add, we're going to have some dependencies that are not met. So it's very similar to what we've done before because we need a form that we're going to use. I'm going to import React, and I'm also going to import change event, use effect, and use state, all from React, lowercase. I'm going to import our link, right, from React router DOM. And I'm going to also import my movie list data service, right? From // our services / movie list service, okay? Movie list data service. And I'm also going to import my movie model from // models / movie. So we have all that stuff that we had before. We're going to make a brand new function called add movie. And the add movie function is something that we're going to export default. Export default, add movie. There we go. All right, so that's going to satisfy our component. And we're going to have some, when it comes to returning, let's return. We already have this, and we've done this in our backend. Let's go to the backend. So backend, there we go. And our backend has an edit page and an add page all in one. And what we've called this thing is the edit. This is this page right here, okay? So for now, we're going to keep it separate. But this is the edit page for the most part, right? And the edit page and the add page, it switches out whether it's an add or edit page in the old way of doing things. And for now, I'm just going to grab this whole container. And the message area here is something that we're going to potentially use, like we said before, for messaging if the information is incorrect. For now, I'm just going to leave the message area out because, well, actually just leave it in there because it doesn't do anything anyway. But this is where we put flash messaging again if we had an issue. So I'm just going to grab all of this. And I'm going to take this and put it inside of the front end. Here we are, and here. All right, so this is where it's going to go. So yeah, so how does this work? So for our title, instead of movie with the title, we're just going to say add movie. Let's do it explicitly. We will Control A, Control F, looking for class and replacing it with class name. Let's do that. So that's all that's done. Right, so replace all. There we go. Oop, undo. Class name, class name. And once we've done that, we have some issues we have to take care of, like in the past. So this one needs a closing tag, and so does this one, and so does this one, as well as this one. So that's all the inputs gone. This part is garbaggio, but we're going to keep one part of it. So instead of it being either the edit button or the add button, we're going to keep only the add button. So that's this part. And we also have a couple of links here. One of them, I'm just going to just go in here, the add button, which is the ID of the add button, is going to have a type which is submit, a class name, kind of, which is all this stuff, button primary, and then and all this stuff right here. That's the button itself. All right. So the submit button, this is going to make the submit event trigger. We also have a link instead of an anchor tag, and instead of an href, we're going to change this to a 2. So if I press the cancel button, it's going to take me back to the movie list page. Oops. Back to the movie list page, like I said, right here. There we go. So that kind of figures that one out. All right. Now, what about the rest of it? Well, remember, what we need is a bunch of values like my name, my director, the year, all that stuff. That's all the stuff that we need from before. And that's, we should kind of match the name and everything else from our movie model, right? So let's go up on the top here and start putting in some destructured arrays for our use itself. And this requires a closing tag, if I'm not wrong. There we go. So it's giving me an error. All right, so no errors on the page. Let's see what this looks like. So const. So we want the ID to be something in there. So I'm going to say ID, and we're also going to set ID, right? So those are the two, and that is going to be use state ID. So the ID is going to start off as nothing. I'm also going to have the name of the movie and set name, and that is going to be use state. And let's also do a, so again, the things that we need, if we look at the movie list model, so if I go to the movie model, which is movie model, models, and let's just do a split screen for now. And we'll just click on the movie model so we can see what we need. So we need a name and a set name. We need a year and a set year. So year and set year. That's also going to be equal to use states. We need a director and a set director. Set director. I'm using caps, but you could also use lowercase. And a rating, and a set rating. Okay, so that is just the way I'm thinking about it right now. We can also kind of shore this up later on. Okay, so that is the destructured arrays that I need for my use state. For use effect, so again, use effects, I need a little function, a fat array function. I'm going to say document.title. That's going to be equal to add movie. And we also want to pass in the dependency array, which is going to be 0 right now. We're not going to do anything with that dependency array. All right, so that is this part. We don't need this part right now. So go back to this. So that's the first piece. So we get our destructured arrays. They're already set up for us. And we want to set up some on change events, right? Because we're going to on change the name, on change the year, on change the director, on change the rating. We need all those things. So let's get those all in there because we know we're going to need them. So we're going to say function, and we're going to go on change name. And it's going to be we're going to call this the, how did I do this for the login page? I think I used, when I did the on changed, I used event. Yeah, I'll just keep the same structure for that. So events, and that'll be the change events of type HTML input element. That's the type. And we're going to set name, and we're going to say event.targets.value is what we want to put in there. And that's going to be the onChangeName method. All right. And we need a bunch of other ones. So we have onChangeName, onChange. We don't need ID. ID is going to do it on its own, as you're going to see in a second. We also need the onChangeYear, which is setYear. Again, we can write this all inline as well. That's not completely false to do that. And onChangeDirector, change director, and then setDirector. And finally, onChange rating, change rating. There we go. So we have all those onChange events, like we know we're going to need. And we also need some kind of save movie function. For now, we're going to call this save movie, right? Which we're going to take an event of type. Okay, so that save movie function is going to be something we're going to do in a second. But for now, let's start coding this stuff. We'll come back to this part right here in a second. All right, on submit. So form method post, that's going to be gone. It's going to be the on submit method on submit, and that's going to be equal to the save movie. That's what's going to happen there. We haven't coded that yet, but that's what happens when you press add. And then the movie name and all that stuff, where the value is this stuff from Express, we can't do this. So here we're going to put in full name. So this is going to be the name of the movie, right? Now, name and its name and name. Name bugs me because name is so weird. So let's just rename this. So refactor rename. Watch, we'll just change the rename symbol to movie name, just so that way there's no issue. I don't want issues with this at all because it might clash with something else. Set movie name. There we go. On change movie name. Okay, and I'm just making that change just so that there's no clash. So that's movie name. And then just like we've done in the past, we need an on change event where the on change event is on change movie name. And that's the change version. The rest is the same. Value for director. So again, this is the director. That's okay. And the on change event is equal to on change director. Okay. For the value of year, that's going to be year. And the on change event is going to be equal to the year. On change year. And rating, which we're almost done here. So rating, and the value of the on change event is going to be on change rating, and that takes care of all of that. So that's all the different events for this thing to come up. And then on save, when we submit the form itself, then this is where all the magic happens. But we haven't done this on the back end. We need to fix the back end first before we can actually make the save movie work. And that happens on the service, the movie list service. So here's our movie list service. All we can do is read. Well, we want to do more than just read. So we need to add in the other things. Might as well add them all at this point since we can finish today. Right? So that's kind of something that we want to do. All right, let's go into services, and we're going to go here. And what we want to do is we want to type in the other services too. So we can read all, that's great. But we also want to be able to create a new movie. We get some data, and the data is going to be of type movie model. I'm going to send in the movie model in here. And the movie model type, this is what this data is going to be. And it says movie model. Did you mean movie model? Oh, wow. Refactor, rename symbol, movie model. That's terrible. Yes, I meant movie model. And I'm going to return http.post, and it's going to pass in the movie model. And what this is going to do is I want to go and do the add. Let's make sure it's a proper link. I want to do the add link. I'm going to pass in the data back to our backend, and I'm going to pass in the auth header as well. So that's what I'm going to do here. And this should be movie model, not move model. Wow. All right, so that is the way we did the movie list. This is how we're doing a post request for the ad, and we're actually going to pass in the data back to our backend, and then we're going to use the auth header to make sure we're authenticated in order for us to do that. So that's our create method. Sometimes I only want to read one, especially when I'm doing editing. So I want to grab this for a second, and I'm going to come back down here, and we want to call this read one. So if I only want to run read one, I'm going to do this by ID. So the ID is of type, well, say any. And we're going to do an HTTP GET request this time, where we do the movie model and we do the edit. Here's the edit link, where we pass in the ID of the edit that's going in right here. And this ID, right, is coming from the ID that's right here. So that's what's happening there. Okay. Let's just put this in backtick as a backtick. All right, we're going to inject the ID here as a template string, and we're not going to need data, but we're going to use the auth header. Okay, that's what we're going to do there. All right, excellent. And then we want to update. So sometimes we want to update. That's the edit part. We want to update. We want to pass in the movie data. So again, the movie model, and the movie model and an ID. We want both of those two things when we want to update. And we're going to return http.post of type movie model. I hate when it does that. And I want to do an edit, and I want to inject this ID. All right, that's the ID that I'm going to do. But I'm also going to pass in, when I update, I'm also going to pass in the data and the auth header. All right, so that's going to be my middleware that I'm using. That's for the update. And finally, for the delete, I'm going to pass in an ID of type any. And for this one, I'm going to do a HTTP GET request, like so, where I pass in the movie model, and instead of delete, I'm going to put, or edit, I'm going to put delete. Okay? So that's how that works. So that's all of the functions. I'm just checking my notes to make sure that we're good. I think so. Edit, 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 movie list, movie list, movie list, delete, add, and everything else. So we don't have the edit link yet, but we will. And this is kind of how it's going to be structured. So that is our movie list data service done. And now let's go back to my ad. So now that I have my movie list data service, then I can do my save movie finally. And how would that work? Well, what I want to do in my save movie is just like we've done before in the past. I want to say event prevent default. So I want to prevent the default behavior of the form. I want to create a piece of data that is of type movie data, right? Okay. And it says, if I did this, movie model is what this should be actually, movie model. And if I did this, it's going to say, hey, you're missing some data. Do you want to inject the data in here? And it says add missing properties. So we can add that in, name and so on. And so this is good, but we want to, instead of it being empty, we want to pass in the information that we have, which is our movie name here, our year here, our director here, and our rating here. Okay, so that's kind of what we have here. That's our movie model. All right. And now that we have our data, that's the data object we're going to pass forward. Then what we want is to say, hey, movie list data service, I want to create, and I'm going to pass in the data that I want to create, just like what it needs. And when I'm done, after I'm done creating, I'm going to have a response, which is of type any, and I'm going to do some settings. So I'm going to set my ID, which is the response.data.id. That's what I want. I want to set my name, which is going to be the response.data.name. Sorry, movie name. No, I was right. .name. I want to set my year, set year, and I want my response.data.year and set director with my response.data.director. Gotta spell this correctly. And finally, my set rating with my response.data.rating. There we go. So all those get set. After I'm done setting that, if there's a catch, like some kind of issue, then I want the error event to be logged. And I might have an error here if I made a mistake. We'll just do a console log E, which should do it. And then, of course, what I want to do is I want to use a window.location.href. This is something we can do as well, where I want to go back to the contact list, right? Contact list. What's another way to do this? Well, we could do a window location.href. That would work because that is JavaScript, right? Or we can do a navigate, right? And we've done this before. And if I go back to login has exactly the same, but we use navigate instead. I like to use navigate because navigate is built in. So navigate comes from use navigate. So let's do that in the movie list service. Sorry, in the ad. So up at the top, we're just going to split screen. And instead of me reinventing the wheel, I'm just going to go steal that from our login. And you can see that all we need is use navigate. We can do that. And then we want to do at the bottom, we can just make an alias for navigate that looks like this. This is the right way to do it with React. We want to use navigation instead of like window.href, right? And down in here, after we have our model, just like we've done in the past, we want to navigate here, if everything goes well. So at the bottom here, we want to use navigate. And we want to navigate to our contact list. And then I can do a window.location.reload, which will help me with some of our functionality. All right, so that is everything that we have from our add component, but we're missing our link in our app.tsx, which is what we need to do next. So inside of our app.tsx, I know I'm running over time, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm also going to take another short break in a second just to get a little bit of water. So here we have our movie list, and I want to add my ad. I'm just going to copy paste because we still need to do a auth guard for adding. And instead of our movie list, we're going to have a /add in here like this, /add. And that's going to be add contact, right? Which is what this is here. So add, right, is my add movie, right? Add movie, add contact, same idea, right? So that's what this is going to be here. So we're going to say add movie, but add movie doesn't compute. So we need to import it here, right? So that's what we need to do from movie list add, but it doesn't go here. It actually goes in the right spot, which is right here, okay? And if everything goes well, I should be able to go and click add movie and navigate there. Let's try this out and see if it works. First, can I do an add by myself? Does the auth guard prevent me? And it does. Next, if I log in and I do this and I click add movie, does it take me to add the movie? And what if I wanted to add a movie in a second? I will. But for now, let's take a 2-second break, or let's say a few minutes. I'm just going to grab some water. When I come back, we'll finish off this part. Guys, thank you so much for sticking around. I'm going to keep going here. If you need to go, that's fine. I'm going to keep going until I'm done CRUD, which is only a little bit, another half an hour or so away. All right, I'll be right back. You're still here. Awesome. Thank you so much for sticking around. All right. Let's do the last little bit. So let's add a new movie. So we have some new movies that are out there, right? Lightyear was a movie that came out recently. Lightyear movie, right? And Lightyear is actually going to stream on Disney right now. It's made by, here's the director, Angus McLean, right? So we'll grab that information into here. The movie's called Lightyear. Lightyear is the name of the title. We'll just get rid of this extra spaces that were added in. The year released was 2022. Except for the rating was not that great. I think it was okay, but it didn't get rated really, really high. So if I go back to Lightyear, and if you look at the rating, it's 5.5 out of 10 on IMDb, 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, and 60% on Metacritic. So this looks like a 3 out of 4 stars. 3 out of 3 out of 4, or if it's out of 5, this would be a kind of 4 out of 5. I'll be okay. 3 out of 4. Let's say 3 stars. Doesn't matter. So I'll go here and say 3 stars. 3 stars. Okay, and I'm going to click add. Now, if everything works, this is going to be added in. If not, we'll get an error. Let's try this out. Add. Oops, the page you requested does not exist. Ooh, what did I put? I put contact list. Okay, that's not what I wanted, but let's see, did it actually do it if I go back to the movie list? No, but it did add something. It just didn't add that information. So we're just going to delete that in a second, but we do have a problem. We tried. Okay, so we did almost everything. A couple of issues that we ran into. My mind is mixed. So if I go back to my ad here, and we can troubleshoot what happened. So it should be movie list, not contact list. You guys didn't even say anything. Movie list. There we go. And what happened on the back end? So if I go back to the back end, we'll have information about what happened. Because we have movie list. I went to the movie list and added it in, but we didn't have a movie that got added in. Let's see what happened here. I'm just going to do Mongosh, and then this will connect us to the back end. So I'm going to say show DBS. So here's the data. I'm going to use media. I'm going to show collections. Here's our movies. I'm going to say db.movies.find. And you can see that we have an empty object at the bottom with nothing. So somehow we didn't get all of this correct, right? That's okay. I know what the problem is. It's what we're sending to the back end that's not correct. Name, year, director, and rating has to be proper. Okay. So let's first delete this last one. So I'm going to delete by ID. So I'm going to go db. Was it movies that I said? db.movies, yeah, db.movies.remove, and remove it by ID. And we're underscore ID, because I've got nothing else to, kind of do it with, is the object ID. Actually, by ID, I can just go like this, 62 EACC 58 DD64. Wow, it's so long. D64 664. I probably should copy paste here. I'll just copy paste. So copy paste. Do that in line. Yes. All right. And will this be enough? Or do I have to put the whole object? I may have to put the whole object in there. Knowledge true, delete count 0. Delete 1 is what I want to use. And let's try it again. So delete 1. And I just want to grab all this. Okay. Good. That deleted it. So now I should be able to see it. That it's gone. So we need name, year, director, and rating, but we're not getting that. And how do we know? Because of our controller. So if I go to the controller on the back end, and if I go to movie list controller, then when we do an ad, right, process the ad page, we need lowercase, movie name, movie director, movie year, movie rating. That's what we need, right? We're giving it capital, and we're not getting the proper things from here. And that's why this isn't working. So lowercase, movie name, movie director, movie year, movie rating. Okay. So knowing that, going back to this, if I go back to my service, which is my movie list service, right, the data that I'm getting back has to also be structured the exact same way, right? So we're passing in the data. The data is not happening here when I create, right? The data is happening when I send it in, which is inside of my my ad. So here, the data is structured name, year, director, rating. But what we need to do is when we make our model, there's two ways. We can either modify the back end, or on the front end where we have our movie, then this would be movie name, movie year, movie director, like this, because that's what we did on the front end, on the back end. When we first did it, that's what we had. We had movie name, movie director, movie year, movie rating. That's what's going to come back on from the front end, right? So, going back to that, if I change my model so it looks like this, that's okay, but it's going to mean that I need to change my model here, right here. So this is movie name, movie year, movie director, and and movie rating. Because this is the data that I'm sending back, or to the back end anyway. Okay, so save. Let's do it again. So back to this. And if I refresh, then, oh, look what happened. So now, because we've changed this part, then we're having a problem with our list, which is this part. So this part, which is down here, it's not name, it's movie name, movie year, movie director, movie rating. Okay. But again, what are the things that we're sending back? Because we're sending a data object, right? So this is what we're looking at here. And this is no good. This has to be backtick. I knew there was an issue. This would be a backtick, where movie ID is what this is going to be. Save. Excellente. Nice. And let's go back here and let's refresh. And you can see that we have an issue, because it says, well, movie name, movie year, movie rating, and movie director, it doesn't match. If it did, then we would have everything coming through. It's getting something, but what's happening is there's a clash. All right, so let me explain. This piece right here, which is going to our service, our movie list service, it's taking the read all and it's taking the movie model the way we want it, and that's what we're getting from our movie list. The movie model itself. Movie model is the thing that we're sending over to the back end. So HTTP GET, and we're sending an array of movie model. We're going to get it from them, right? But the problem is the movie model that's inbound, which is the one from the back end. Let me just go back to the back end for a second. The movie list that's coming in from the back end, which is our display movie list, is coming back as a movies collection. A movies collection that we're getting, and because the movies collection is of type movie, this, right? Movie model looks like this. That's why we were able to read it. But on the way back out, our poor movie model doesn't look like this anymore because of our controller, right? Our controller needs this for director, blah, 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 blah. Body.movie name, body.movie director, body.movie year, body.movie rating. So this is what it needs. So if I actually was to do an ad, let's leave it the way it is for a second. Let's do add movie and put in the movie name. So Lightyear, and the director name is, I'm just going to show you how this works, so we can go through this. So the director name is, what was it again? Angus McLean. Angus McLean. Angus McLean. Capital L, just to be accurate. 2022, 3.5 stars, we'll say. All right, and click add. Now we don't see it here, but what does it look like on the back end? So on the back end, right, if I do a db.find, there it is. We added it in properly. So the adding works, but the displaying doesn't. Why? Because of the way we had our back end work. Our back end looks at movie name, movie director, movie year, movie rating. Our front end only looks at name, director, year, and rating. And this is where we have to be a little bit more selective in what we do. This is also going to be a problem when we edit, right? Whether we edit or whether we add, this is going to be a problem. So what we're going to do instead is going to change the back end to make it fit with the model, because it doesn't care. The back end doesn't really care how you put it in. So we're going to just be consistent. Name, director, year, and rating. Okay, name, director, year, and rating. That's what's going to happen there. Name, director, year, and rating goes here, because we can make it whatever we want. And we're making this change ahead of time because I know this is how it should look. So name, director, year, and rating goes here. Save. And that means the back end's changed. The back end is now changed because I added these things in. Well, then that means that the front end, going back to the front end here, going back to the model again, going back to my movie model is going to change back to what it was before. So, right? And that means that the movie list is going to change back to what it was before. And the add is going to change to what it was before, which is this. And that should pull up our issues, because that's the problem. Okay, so that's what that does. And if I go back to the front, we can now see everything. There's Lightyear. And let's add another movie. So Lightyear was a recent one. And let's add, the previous movie to that one, which was Toy Story. So that was the previous version to this one from Pixar, right? So Toy Story was the original one, or where we had Buzz Lightyear in the movie back in the day. So let's look at that one. So if I go to Toy Story movie, and if I go back into here and look at Wikipedia for Toy Story, it was directed by John Lasseter. John Lasseter, which actually is a really good director. Let's add that in. So movie name is Toy Story. John Lasseter, Lass Lasseter. And year released was 1985. Wow, it's a long time ago. Can't believe it. And the rating was really good. We'll say it's 4.5 stars. Go. And we'll click add. And now you can see Toy Story is there too. Yay. Right? So that's everything working now as it should, but we have to change the back end to make that effect. Okay, let's put this up on GitHub. So again, going back to here, I'm going to click on the front end, git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say add movie functionality. On the back end, git commits. How about that? Git commits, not git COMP229. And on the back end, we also have a change because we also modified the back end. Yeah, we'll add in another one. There we go. We'll say git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say changed the movie list controller git push. Okay, so that changes both the front and the back end, which is pretty cool. And now the last part is the edit and the delete. Let's do the delete first because it's quick. So back to this, here it is. And so we have our ad movie and all that kind of stuff. How do we do the other piece, which is the delete function? Well, delete actually is another component. So that is kind of our, and it's not really a component that we have here in the authentication or in the models. We have movie and user model, and inside of the movie list, we have an ad and a movie list. Nice. But what we want in here instead is we want the in our movie list itself to allow us to delete. And we actually have our confirmed delete in our delete contact, remember? So that's what we want. And that's where we're going to do it inside of here. So how do we delete our, instead of delete contact, we'll call this delete F2. Delete movie. I don't know why I'm thinking contact. Contact is my brain. So when we delete movie, here's where we're going to do it. We're going to call the movie list data service, and we're going to say delete by ID. That's what's going to be done. When we're done, we're going to get a response, and which is of type any, and we are going to do something about it where we refresh our movie list. Refresh list. And we don't have the refresh list function. We're also going to do the refresh list function here if we're not doing the deletion. So we can confirm delete, but we want to refresh the list because we want to be able to do this and refresh list. Otherwise, we're going to do a catch, and it's going to be an error. So if, let's say there's some kind of server error, we can't do it, then I want to console that out, console log E. Okay, but we need the refresh list method here in the movie list. And the refresh list method is something that we're going to put in just before the get movie list. So get movie list, we're going to have another function called refresh list. And the refresh list method is just going to be reading the movie list again, get movie list. That's what the refresh list does. Okay, it's just almost like a wrapper for this function. All right, so that's what this does. Refresh list, right? And we're refresh list here as well. And refresh list is just going to kind of refresh the list one more time. It's going to get the data and from the movie list one more time. And that's what the delete does. And confirm delete. So confirm delete and delete movie and get movie list is one thing. What about the edit function? Well, the edit function has nothing to do with this one. The edit function will actually be an anchor tag, a link that's going to go to the edit method, and it's going to send in, as an example, the movie ID to the edit, and that's what's going to do the link itself. That's going to be a link that we're going to go there, and that's going to show us the edit page. But for now, let's see if we can try and delete that movie. So save, and if I go back out to the page, this one, and if I refresh, right, so we're here still. Let's remove Toy Story. So I'm going to click delete. It should give us, are you sure? I'm going to say cancel. It's going to still be there. But if I say delete and if I press OK, then that movie is gone. And if I refresh, you're going to see that again, that movie is gone. If I look inside the database on the back end, just to confirm that that's there, and if I go to db.movies.find, you don't see that movie in the database. Okay, which is pretty cool. So that delete function works. Let's put this up on GitHub. So again, git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added delete functionality, git push. Okay, so that's what happens there. So delete works. The last part is the edit. And the edit is very similar to add. All right, and this is where we may elect in the future to, because it's almost identical to add actually, except it's just called edit. Let's just do that. So we'll just change this from add to edit. So we're going to copy paste. And we're going to rename this thing, so F2, and we'll rename it to edit. So there's edit. Edit and add are the exact same right now. One of them is add movie, and the other one is edit movie. Okay, so again, we're going to clean this up eventually. But for the rest, all of this is mostly the same. We have our movie name, we have our we're going to have our year, our director, our rating. All this stuff is the same. Navigate will still be there, but instead of our ID, this is something that's new that I'm going to do. We're going to use something else, and we've never done this before, and it's just kind of a shame because we can use something called use params, which is another hook that we can use here. And what params do is allow us to get parameters passed from one object to another, from one page to another. And this is what's going to happen here. So I'm going to say const, and we're going to make this ID lowercase id. And we're going to say that that is equal to use params, which is very similar to using state. And all we're doing is passing our parameter here to the ID. In useEffect this time, right? Then what I want to do is I want to get my movie by ID, right? So get my movie by ID. I don't have that function yet, so let's make it. I'll make it right here. So I have a new function called get movie. This will load the movie from the database, okay? And what this is going to do is I'm going to say, hey, movie list data service. So it is a little bit different. I want to read one, remember we programmed that already, by ID, and I want to get back a response of type any, where I'm going to, I'm also going to do a catch here, where we have a catch of type error. I'm just going to do this in a second, just that way it's done. Right? All the same stuff as we did before, but this movie list data service, what it's going to do is I want to set all that stuff up again, just like we did down here. So this set stuff that we're going to do, set otherwise other than the ID, because we don't need the ID anymore. I want to set all of this up. I want to set all of this up here. So I'm going to say set movie name to the response dot, so response.data. Now, this is interesting because we're getting one. All right, just to talk about this for a second. And if I go back to the back end, just to show you what this looks like. So remember that the movie list controller, when we get a movie, so when I get one movie, right? So I display the edit page. What I'm really doing is finding by ID, and I'm returning the movie. That's what I'm returning back. I need to return this movie back. So I'm getting a movie back from this, and the movie has all those things. So that means that this isn't incorrect. This has got to be response.data.movie.name, response.data.movie.year, and so on. So that's a little different than the other part. That gets it from the database. And that's when we get that information, we put this in there. And get movie is going to happen as soon as I load the page, because let's say get movie. And I'm going to pass in the ID of the parameter ID that I pass into this page, the edit movie page. Right? So that's what's going to happen there. And I also need to use ID as part of my dependency array here and use effect, right? Because it's kind of matching. All right, so every time I load the page, I'm going to fetch the ID here every single time. And this will be, instead of edit movie, add movie, it'll be edit movie. And that's the first function we're going to do. The change functions are all the same: on change movie name, on change year, on change director, on change rating. All that stuff is the same. And the save movie is almost identical, right? Except what we're doing is we are changing the ID here. We're changing it to ID, the one we're passing in here. We're using the same ID and updating the movie as we did before. And instead of using movie list data service create, we're going to say movie list data service update, where we pass in the data that's going to change and its ID. Okay. And then when we set the name, the year, the director, and the rating, that remains the same. We want to go back to the movie list. We want to reload. And now let's take a look at this one. This should say edit contact or edit movie contact. Wow, I'm stuck on that. Where we have my movie name and everything else. All of this part here remains the same. So this part right here is something that we can maybe put inside of another function. We don't have that yet, but somewhere down here, and this will be the edit movie component. So almost identical, to the add movie, but we added in another couple of functions. One of them was a use params method, and we used get movie as a new function. For the most part, it's identical. Set movie uses update instead of create, and everything is as it should be. Let's save that. And let's also add in under my app.tsx a link, just like we had before. So I'm just going to copy this. And this would be the edit link. And this would be edit movie. And there is no edit movie, but we're going to kind of import it. And we're going to put this in place from here to here. And that gives us that link. And let's see if we can actually edit a movie. So saved everything. And we'll go back to here. We can see the movie list page is still okay. And let's edit Lightyear and give it only 3 stars. So edit. Okay, so this is bad. It says we want to go to edit and this page. So that's new. And why is that? We can't go to the page because we want to edit information that we want to pass in. And the reason for this was almost perfect. But remember that the app.tsx page, right, that we're getting in here. So let's go back to that page for a second, app.tsx. Here it is. So yeah, it's pretty cool, but we're missing parts of it, right? We're not just going to edit, we're actually going to /ID. So we're getting the ID of this, whatever that is, and then we're going to edit the contact or the movie in this case. Okay, so what we're missing was this part right here. That's the actual link. All right, let's save. Try it again. And if I go refresh and click edit, now we can see the data that comes back from here. And let's change this to 3.0 stars and click, well, that should say edit. So let's cancel. It'll take us back here. That's good. Cancel works. Let's go back here and into my edit movie. And that should say, that's another thing that should change down here. So that should say edit. And this also should be different. It shouldn't see the FA plus circle. That should be what we had before, right? In the edit, so if I go back actually to the back end, and if I go to views, the edit page, then what I want to do is get this edit button here. So that's what it should be. So if I go back to the front, this shouldn't say add button. This should be the edit button. It should still be submit. That's what's going to happen. But it should be slightly different. So it's FAS, FA edit, FA large is going to be the way it's going to look. So slightly different than what we had in the, there it goes, FAS, FA edit, FA large, save. There we go. And let's go back to this part and we'll refresh and we'll click edit. And now we can say the edit button, right? And we can change this from 3 to 3.0 stars and click edit, and it worked. So now our full functionality is there. So full CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. And all of those things are protected because if I log out and if I try and edit that page, so edit, and let's try doing this, it's going to go, bam, nope, it won't work. Okay? And so that is the edit functionality. And that's on the front end, which is here. So edit wasn't so bad. Git add dot, git commit -m, and we'll say added update functionality. Git push. All right, so that is the complete thing. I mean, if you really wanted to use React at this point, you have almost everything you need to switch over to React from Express. And I think this is pretty good. I know this was a long movie, a long video. I kind of went over about an hour and a half. I was supposed to finish it at 2:30, and it's almost 4. But the idea is that you've got everything you need, to get everything done. Okay, so lots and lots of stuff here. I know that that there's a lot here, but the great thing is that you'll have, like I said, everything you need to convert. Any questions? I know this is a lot, and the people online on YouTube aren't really asking much anyway, but it is what it is. I got a lot of spam today, which is bizarre, but it is what it is. Okay, so I didn't suspect there's any. So I'm going to stop recording this, but this is basically everything you need to have a complete site. Next week, what we're going to do is to finish this off. We have all the functionality. Now, how do you put it up on Heroku? How do you put the front end on GitHub pages? We'll talk about that next week. So for this week, we're done. We've done accessing movie list data, and we've updated the movie list. We've actually done full CRUD, right? So we've also, I'll put that in more React. We did accessing the movie list data as well as performing full CRUD. Okay, that's what we did. And we're going to come back to, to do more next week when we finish off this stuff. So I'm going to stop recording here, and then we'll go from there. Yeah, one sec. Let me just stop recording. Yeah, hold on. Let me just stop recording here for a second. All right, thanks guys on YouTube. Thanks.